Right, we're already 4 minutes late. Apologies, that's not a good start. Good evening and welcome to the Chiswick Area Forum. My name is Jack Emsley. I'm a councillor for Chiswick Homefields and I'm chairing this evening's meeting. Those watching on YouTube may think that Chiswick Town Hall looks a bit different. It is, in fact, that we are delighted that this evening's Chiswick Area Forum is taking place at St Paul's Church in Grove Park. This is part of our commitment as the next municipal year to make the Area Forum accessible to new communities across Chiswick, and as part of that we'll be taking the meeting on the road throughout the coming municipal year. A huge thanks to the team here at St Paul's for the warm welcome, and we look forward to having what we hope will be an interesting and informative meeting. For tonight's proceedings, as chair, I will be running the meeting and inviting people to speak. We have a full and I hope interesting agenda, and I will endeavour to allow as many people to speak as possible. With that in mind, you all know the drill. Please, phones on silent, and everyone who is speaking, I know knows this, but please, no interrupting, hands up, and we will make sure that we give you your turn. For anyone who prefers written comments and questions, there are also some evaluation forms, I think, at the back, and I'm sure officers can flag those. If you have a question that you'd like to write down, please do fill in that form and hand it to an officer. If they can put their hands up at the back, there we go. We will write directly in response. Right. I think that moves us on to agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence, declarations of interest, and any communications. I haven't had apologies for absence, but I do know that Councillor Croft is running late because of a mayoral event. So I assume she sends her apologies. Any declarations of interest, I will just declare that I have had numerous communications about agenda item 4, which is weed management, and agenda item 5, events at Gunnersbury Park. And I'm also going to declare that I dig hedgehog highways with Wild Chiswick. So that's my link with the first speaker. Any other declarations to make?
I've had emails regarding Gunnersbury Park as well.
Okay. As have I.
And so have I. Okay, everyone has. Okay. Excellent. All right, anything else to declare? Oh, yes.
And of course I represent Gunnersbury Park, Garden Estate. Gunnersbury Park is in Chiswick Gunnersbury ward, and...
Yes, Councillor Biddulph,
yes,
Councillor
just
Gill,
so you know.
and Councillor Machise represent that ward as well. Excellent. All right. Agenda item 2 then, which is just a legal notice I have to read out to say that this meeting is being recorded. So I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and the recording will be made available for viewing on Hounslow Council's YouTube page in the coming days. Basically what that means is if you speak, please don't give your address or your national insurance number or your passport number, because everyone online will be able to see it. So keep personal details to a minimum, please. Thank you. Right, legal bits over. We can kick off with Wild Chiswick. So I'd like to welcome Joe Gilbert, who is the founder of Wild Chiswick, to talk to us about the work the group does for our local wildlife. I've known Joe for just over 4 years now, have been delighted to work with the group, and I am confident we are going to have a fascinating presentation. So Joe, please, over to you.
Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity, and secondly, you drill fantastic hedgehog holes. Okay. I'm going to read this because otherwise I will go on forever and I have a short period of time. So I founded Wild Chiswick with the goal of being a voice for local wildlife. I really wanted to make people aware of species around us, why they're important to ecosystem, and to encourage the maintenance of valuable habitat and green areas. And, well, who knows, maybe we might actually create some new ones together as well. So, over the past 2 weeks, I've worked with over 200 children from Belmont and Grove Park schools, as well as St Nicholas Sunday School, to go bug hunting, talk about hedgehogs and how we can help them, and we had a fantastic time making butterfly and hedgehog masks. This is part of my work I really love, and when I was writing this, it reminded me of the song that says, "Children are our future," and now I feel that it should be, now it's "Children are every species' future." We've actually put effort into 2 species into Chiswick that are vulnerable to extinction, swifts and our hedgehogs. We've installed swift boxes and worked with Zoological Society of London so we know where our hedgehog population resides. And it's right here. It's in Grove Park and it's on Strand and the Green. We're also developing a wildlife plot at Staveley Road's allotments and finding all kinds of wonderful species there, and we've also had school children in to help us do that. So we do quite a bit, but we can't do this alone, especially now when, quite frankly, our wildlife is finding all kinds of problems, they're in crisis, and our ecosystems are also in crisis. So we need everyone at this table, everyone in this room, and quite frankly, everybody across the nation to help with wildlife. And I'm going to make 4 requests to you all today where you can help us at Wild Chiswick do that. Firstly, number 1, please put up swift boxes. This is imperative now that the current government has voted against mandatory swift brick installation in new builds. You know, this is a bird that was flying with dinosaurs, and it's about to become extinct because we're not willing to put up boxes or bricks to help them nest. They're actually only here for 5 months of the year, and they actually come here to nest. That's why they're here. They're also nest faithful. So if nests are destroyed or new ones can't be found for their young, they'll die out. It's as simple as that. So please consider doing this and contact us because we can help you there. We can advise you and help you maybe get them installed. Number 2, put in a 13-centimetre hedgehog hole in your garden fences. Really, it's only 13 centimetres to save a species. It's not much to ask. And keep your gardens green. This helps all wildlife. Please try and avoid plastic grass. This is an ecological desert, which also helps increase the heat buildup in urban areas. The more green gardens we have for hedgehogs to forage in, the better. Now, we do have people refuse hedgehog highways because cats, foxes, or rats might use the hole. And yes, this is true, they can. But if they want to get into your property, they can. They're very, very good climbers. I've seen foxes go over 9-foot fences. Not so for the poor hedgehog, so please do consider the poor hedgehog. Number 3 is a bit more contentious for today. I know we're going to have a discussion about glyphosate. Just want you to remember that this can be found in Roundup. You may be using it in your own garden. I would ask you to please stop. I have researched. Glyphosate damages wildlife. I don't know if many of you heard of Dave Golson. He's done a lot of writing about bees. He's been on a lot of PR and newspapers lately. He actually did research onto the effect of glyphosate on garden birds. An example of his results are on house sparrows, which are also an endangered species. There were 25% reduction in abundance of sparrows in areas where glyphosate was used. Other research shows bees being neurologically damaged with delayed brood development. Amphibians show development impairments with malfunctions or malformations of mouth and intestine, because yes, like all chemicals, this one ends up in our waterways. A little bit brighter, I'm pushing this at the moment, we have a nature survey on our website. That's wildchiswick.com/nature survey, and we're asking people to please start entering all the wildlife you see. We've created this form in collaboration with the Green Space Information for Greater London, also known as GIGGLE. Their data is used by ecologists and Hounslow Council for development and nature recovery planning. If a species ain't in it, it's not going to be considered. So the more we can put into that, the better. So just to finish off, these are quite simple actions to help wildlife. Maybe they might cause a bit of inconvenience, maybe they're not to like everybody's liking, but they are necessary to help save species. Please help protect our ecosystems. Without a balanced ecosystem, we are all in trouble. Sorry to end on a bit of a sad note, but I do thank you all very much for listening and for being given the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't want a hedgehog hole in their fence, but hopefully people understand now that they are great. I want to come to anyone in the audience who might have a question or a comment on the things that Joe has talked about first. Any hands? Yes? Can we bring you a microphone? I think Omar's going to run down first. Oh, or here. We're going the long way. But that's fine. It's worth the wait. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Omar. Okay, right there. Oh, that's it.
I hoped that I'd created a wildlife bit in my garden by heaping up lots of broken logs and twigs and things. And I've got a very small pond, but I haven't seen anything come except frogs. Is there anything more I should be doing?
Well, congratulations on the frogs. That's excellent. Other things you can be doing is, I don't know how big your garden is. The log piles are fantastic.
It's in Chiswick. It's about 20 by 20.
Okay, good. I don't know how many plants you have there, but if you can put plants in for pollinators, for bees, that sort of thing, that'd be fantastic. We're also realised that if you can leave a little mound of soil, maybe sandy soil, without any planting on it, that attracts different types of bees. Those are mining bees. And they will use that to actually lay their eggs and produce young. So if that's something else you could think about doing. Area of long grass, also great for nature. Maybe ones you're not that bothered about having, but small mammals, for example.
I have no grass. I have hay fever.
Oh. Stick with the plants. Maybe some bushes that have got a lot of cover on them that will also attract more insects.
I've got quite a few. I've got probably 2 trees, quite a lot of shrubs, ivy, honeysuckle, covering fences and things. So I do get a lot of birds coming in.
Lovely.
But not anything else.
How about, so your ivy is lovely because at the end of the summer you will get ivy bees, and by the name we know that they like the flowers of ivy, so you'll be helping them an awful lot. What else would you like?
Well, I would like a hedgehog. I had one when I lived in Horsham.
I wondered if that's what you were getting at.
And
Where are you in Chiswick?
I don't know. Would I like bats?
Oh, well, if you've got honeysuckle, that's something else that's brilliant. If you want to attract bats, plant flowers that are scented in the evening, because that attracts certain moths, and that means that the bats can eat them.
Okay.
So it's always a good idea to put scented plants in, like your honeysuckle. Where do you live in Chiswick?
I live in Chiswick Lane, opposite Homefield Park.
Sorry, opposite?
Homefield Park.
Homefields. So it's not this side of the 316, is it?
No.
Yeah. I would say we can put a hole, or you can put a little gap in your fence, and they may well come. I say this because I've said the populations here, that's true. However, there's always one that goes against the grain, and we do have a hedgehog over the other side of 316 in the Chertsey Road allotments. So, you know, there is always hope.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or gardening tips? Is that one there? No. Oh, here, Carolyn.
Hi, I just wanted, I'm concerned about the weed killer, and we have a gentleman, I think, who's coming from Highways to speak later, who sadly isn't here now, but he will be here later, will he? Oh, he is here. Oh, you're sitting there. I was looking at your... Sorry. Yes. Well, then I'll save the question for when we get on to the weed killer under your section, because I'm very concerned about that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions from the audience, we'll move on to councillors. Councillor Thompson.
Just, if you're lucky enough to have them, do we need to sort of feed them? Because I know you can sort of leave dog food, cat food.
Hedgehogs.
Yeah. And my second question, might be impossible to answer this one unless you're busy tracking them at the same time, but do you have a sense of what the population is?
Yeah. So the first one, if you want to feed hedgehogs, yes, a nice shallow bowl of water so they don't fall in and drown. And then meaty cat meat and cat biscuits is what you could feed them. But remember, it's a supplement. I don't want to stop them actually going out and foraging naturally. For the actual population of Chiswick, it's very hard to tell because legally we can't track them. However, we have been working last year and again, actually next week, with People's Trust of Endangered Species and Zoological Society of London, who are running a national hedgehog monitoring programme. And I believe that after a couple of years, they should be able to give us a better idea of the actual population size. So ask me again in about 2 years' time.
Excellent. Councillor Michise.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for coming today. My question is, as an alternative to glyphosate, do you have one? Because we have Tim Hurley here who may want some advice as to what's the best alternative to the use of glyphosate.
So I have had a look to find out if there is anything. And I found things that they say is less harmful, which is better than the harm glyphosate can do. There is something, and I don't know if you've heard of it, pelorganic acid, which is also, I think, comes under the brand of Phynosam, which I believe is made up from fatty plant molecules, which isn't supposed to harm soil biodiversity or wildlife. There are other things, but they need an upfront capital cost. So there's foam stream, which I believe is hot water and foam. And there's also infrared weeders, which I think are something new, but they come at a cost. I am told that these are better for wildlife, but I have not yet done enough research to find out, or found research to find out how much that is true. Oh, there is something else called acetic acid as well, which you can get from Weed Farm, but I think that's vinegar-based, and I think it may still be a bit harmful, but lower concentration, so less issue to animals.
Excellent. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Joe, for that wonderful presentation earlier. And I was really encouraged when I spoke to you earlier and you gave me this leaflet about recording the species of birds in Chiswick. So I think anyone who's not picked up this leaflet should record the number of birds you see and send it to the species, I mean, of course.
Yes, any species, not just birds, anything from an ant up to a fox or anything. We just want to know where you've seen it, and the form's quite simple, and as I say, it goes straight into giggle.
Yeah, and it's a long time. It is from the 1st of June to the 31st of August. So
that's actually an incentive. Yeah. So this form's going to be up there all the time. So hopefully you'll really get engaged with recording species and carry on forever. But as an incentive, we are running a little challenge from 1st of June. It started through to 31st of August. And the person who records the most amount of species will get a lovely plaque to put in your lounge or your office, which will be presented on the 14th of September at the Chas Autumn Show. And we will also have a £50 voucher for Hilliers Garden Centre, unless you're a child, because hopefully they will also enter, in which case we will have a very nice children's present instead.
Brilliant. Oh, Councillor Gill's got another one.
Yeah, I haven't finished it. Sorry. You talked about feeding the hedgehogs. I used to get hedgehogs in my garden, but I know initially people say you should give them milk.
No.
But that's not the right thing, as I found out, of course. And then I've given them dog food as well. Is that okay? Because you mentioned about cat food, but you didn't say...
Dog food's probably fine. It's I think cat food tends to be a little bit smaller, so it's easier for them to munch.
Yeah.
So if you're giving them dog food, meaty dog food, just give it a good old mash first.
Yeah, well, I always mash it up anyway, so it's not... Just checking, just to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So.
You are.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Gill can use all of that dog food in his cupboard. He's happy about that.
Well, I think my dog is not too happy.
Well, no, maybe not, maybe not. Let's not replace him. Councillor Biddulph.
Thank you. And it was good to have a quick chat beforehand, because we talked about one subject, which I will come to as my second point. We have raised foam stream before. Councillor Thompson has raised it in a blog at one point, and I've raised it because somebody ran a business dealing with foam stream method in Chiswick Gunnersbury ward. I was very keen for him to do a trial to show what can be done. And the answer that I was given was that it does kill the plant, but this plant needs still to be dug up by manpower, so you're paying for two processes, really. I'm still going to bang on about it. I'm not giving up, and I also wonder about filling the gaps where these weeds are coming through, and they're good for wildlife, as you said, but walking along here, you see them in places where they might be acceptable, up to a point for those who want the wildlife to be the priority. But if they become a trip hazard because they're in the middle of the pavements, it's not so good. There is a problem in removing them with manpower, and I don't know if you've ever come across anything that helps remove that double cost, as it were. But the other policy that I would be interested in you helping us with is the front gardens policy. We do need more people to say that it is wrong to pave over your front gardens, or you should be encouraged not to. We can say it. We're councillors. We may not get anywhere. We do need members of the public and organisations such as yours to raise that issue again and again, because it's being ignored. There is a front gardens policy. It's quite a good one. It looks out of date. It could easily be updated, and it could be added to, for example, planning rules, so that planners are supposed to say to people, don't pave your front gardens, maybe some incentives, I don't mean financial ones, and also to landlords. And we do know where housing landlords are, and they could be encouraged to unpave and certainly not to pave. So organisations like yours, if you can help run campaigns that we can support, that would be great.
I think with the foam stream, that's probably an answer I can't give you, because it's not something that I've looked into a huge amount of detail, and certainly not, you know, the methods of doing it, whether it then needs clearing up again or not. On the front gardens, I wasn't aware there was a policy that covered the whole of Chiswick.
The whole of the borough?
There are other ways that you can make your front garden into somewhere you can park your car, which I think is one of the main reasons this happens. I haven't got any of the names to hand, but you can, instead of just paving it or tarmacking it, you can get the little bricks that have the holes in, that you can then seed with grass or even wildflowers, which will grow up. You can still drive your car on it, but it's still green, and it also sucks up any rainwater, so it should alleviate some of the flooding problems as well.
Thanks. If I could just add to that, yes, some applications are about car parking, but in conservation areas you can't do that. There is a policy of not having paved gardens in conservation areas. It's often tenanted properties where the landlords don't want to leave the tenants with a problem, gardening being seen as a problem rather than an opportunity. Just so you know.
Thank you.
Real. Any other councillors? No. All right. Well, look, Joe, thank you very much. That was very informative. I know what I'm doing in my garden now. It's hedgehog holes and cat food and lots of seeds as well. But that was really, really informative. Thank you very much. And anything that you'd like to promote? And I think we've already talked about the count, but is there a website that we can go to for the count?
Yes, of course. It's www.wildchiswick.com/nature survey.
Perfect. So if you want to win that plaque on the 14th of September, log on there before the end of August.
Yes, I think I'm closing it, end of August, 31st of August. But not the actual recording. Carry on doing the recording. The form will always be there.
Log on. Excellent. Right. Well, look, Joe, thank you very much for that. And thank you again for a lovely presentation.
Pleasure.
Right. Right. I feel like there was a nice segue there into weeds at some point. So that is our next agenda item, which is agenda item 4, which is an update from Hounslow Highways on weed management. And I'd like to welcome Tim Hurley, Service Director at Hounslow Highways, and Sabeel Khan, Assistant Director of Transport and Parking, to talk about weed management in Chiswick. So both, thank you very much for coming. I'm sure this is going to be a long discussion, but we're really grateful that you're here. So please, over to you.
Thank you. So, Tim Hurley, Sabeel, and thank you for inviting us today. We know this is a very emotive topic from both sides, and it's good to have an opportunity to explain to people the thought process that goes into how we're trying to deal with weeds in the borough. Just to say, this is specifically highways that we're talking about. Sorry. So adopted roads, adopted carriageways. It doesn't affect parks unless it's an adopted footway through the park. Because everything that's been said today regarding greening of front gardens and other things we absolutely support, but this is specifically about the adopted footways and carriageways. A little bit of history. Hounslow Highways, London Borough Hounslow, had used a glyphosate-based solution for a number of years, but this stopped in 2019. A couple of reasons for that. Climate emergency was declared by the London Borough of Hounslow for a number of reasons, and I think biodiversity was one of them, so it definitely supported that target. Ourselves, we wanted to encourage biodiversity. We have been supporting wildflower verges for the borough. There's 42 so far. We're looking at degraying schemes, the grey to green, where we're taking out asphalt and ASP and putting in green solutions where possible to improve the borough. But there was also, at the time, a thought process around the delicensing of glyphosate. It was expected that there would be a decision possibly about getting rid of glyphosate, as we were part of the EU at the time, from December 22. So Hounslow Highways with London Borough Hounslow took the decision to maybe get ahead of that and be a pathfinder and try and go without glyphosate from that point on. We didn't want to be dealing with it at the last minute. We thought a trial solution would give us some useful information. What we did was take the weeding budget, because people thought this was maybe a cost-saving exercise. It wasn't. We took whatever we spent on chemical solutions before, we put that into additional manpower on the network, and over years that additional amount has increased significantly. I'd say the amount we spent on weed control has gone up 5 times in the last few years and doesn't look to be decreasing. Previous 5 years have been a useful experience for us, and I think there's been issues around the environment, which have affected the germination rates of seeds. So what we've seen is, when we started the exercise, you might have one road which had maybe 5% of weed coverage. As we've gone through this process, you now find that that road could have 30–40% of weed coverage. We're also seeing that the seasons are going longer, so we used to do weed removal or spraying from around May and maybe 2 or 3 sessions, which would go through to August, September. But now actually we found weed control is an all year round activity. It's not just something that we can do from May onwards. So in a way that's been good, because we kept the resource that we would normally do for leafing and we moved them into weed control, which has been good from a resource perspective, because it means we keep the same people, we keep the same experience. And just to say, it was the right decision. It was the right decision that we tried. I will say before we go on to the next slide, we have not given up. We have not said that glyphosate is the only way of doing this, but there has had to be a gap maybe now where we look at glyphosate temporarily, which I'll come to. Just in terms of how this looks to us, we obviously get feedback from members of the public. So this is our inquiries graph specifically on weeds, which are reported through our Fix My Street site and the predecessor for it. You can see there's been a fairly significant increase in the number of inquiries on weeds, and generally it's been about when are you going to remove weeds in our borough. It's not all negative. It's not all people complaining about the weeds. There are compliments we get as well, supporting the biodiversity actions that we put in place. And often the question is, okay, I get what you're doing, I get you're not using chemicals, and I get that it's taking you longer, but when will you come and clear my road? For the reasons given, and often it's around not just the visual aspect, it is around how it can obstruct footpaths and carriageways. So we're working, I'm pressing this one, he's doing that one. Just for information, so a simple graph using the same data, so it's all data provided to us by members of the public through Fix My Street. Essentially, the blue shows the number of weed inquiries by ward in 2019, which was the last year we used glyphosate. The orange shows the number of inquiries we got last year. So I think we said it's gone from around 200 a year to 1,200. I just thought this might be useful from a resident perspective about where the issues are. Interestingly, some of the wards didn't increase significantly, but generally across the areas it have, especially I think in the east and in the centre. Just leave that if you want to look at your ward for a second. Sorry. Maybe I should point out the ones that may affect you. Chiswick is the fourth from the left. Chiswick Gunnersbury, fourth from the left. And then directly next to it, we have Chiswick Homefield, which is probably the third highest across the borough, and then Chiswick Riverside right next to it. Thankfully, they're alphabetical, so that makes it easier for me. Okay. So I guess outcome of the 5-year trial, we have not just been doing manual removal, we have been trialling a number of solutions, many of which have been mentioned here. This wasn't simply we're going to put some guys out there with some hose and some brooms and see how they get on with it. We have been trying to find that magic wand that will do what glyphosate does, maybe not as quickly, maybe not as cheaply, maybe even not as effectively, but would be viable to us. We are a highway authority, so our principal objective is to keep the highways safe, not just now, but as we go through. And a key issue for us is ensuring that we can maintain that asset condition. Weed growth, unmanaged over a period of time, will affect the condition of the footway and the carriageway. It will cause gaps as the weeds grow and they get stronger and they're harder to remove. It will obviously present the trip hazard side of it, and also the mechanical action of clearing weeds, especially around asphalt footways and carriageways, where operatives will essentially try and dislodge the weed with a hoe, then starts chipping away at the asphalt. So it starts to cause defects within the carriageway and the footway. So that is something that we've had to really consider as we've gone through this. But we have considered viable alternatives, so I'll happily talk about the alternatives later if people want our thoughts. We are not the all-knowing people about it, but we have done a lot of trials. We tried foam stream, we tried electric. We haven't tried some of the newer ones, and there is something we're doing going forward on microwave and heat solutions that we're looking at, as well as non-glyphosate-based chemical alternatives, because there is an increasing array of alternative out there. I think it's fair to say a lot of the advantage in terms of looking at non-glyphosate solutions comes from Europe. A number of countries in Europe have been glyphosate-free in urban areas for 5, 6, 7 longer years. So there is a lot of good experience out there. And Hounslow Highways, as part of a large company, which is Vinci, have used that experience from our partners and our clients in other countries to look at what solutions they've been using. So some of the trials we're actually putting in place at the moment, it's actually 4 in the next month, have been bringing over solutions which are licensed in Europe, but not yet in the UK, to see if they might be viable for us. But we have deemed it necessary. I think there was a report from Hounslow Council, which looked at glyphosate as well, to introduce chemicals on a limited basis, and this is limited. Whatever we're doing now isn't about clearing weeds this year. It's actually about reducing the growth and regrowth of weeds next year. So people will think, oh, okay, and some people are pro-glyphosate, and they said, oh, great, you'll deal with weeds this year. We won't. We'll be spraying them. We're trying to reduce the germination, reduce the seeding, so that next year there's something more manageable, which will hopefully have less chemical or no chemical use as we go into it. We'll not only know the outcome of that as we get through this next 2 seasons. So we've had to look at it to stem the expansion of germination of weeds throughout the borough, prevent deterioration of pavement condition, and provide a respite as we go into the next season. We are continuing research, so like I said, we've got extensive trials. We have, in partnership with our sister companies within Ringway and Vinci, and in partnership with the borough, we actually brought in 20 companies. We put a bid out there to look for alternatives that are in use, and we interviewed all of those companies. We shortlisted those companies down to 5 alternatives, one of which the trial is happening tomorrow. I think it's in Isleworth, which is a salt-based solution. So it's looking at essentially a saline solution that has been used, I think, in Denmark with some success. We have another one, which is a non-glyphosate chemical. We have a steam solution. And there's also something, we're doing heat treatment as well, which is on the Chiswick retaining wall. So we are continuing these efforts to find an alternative. We have done that by utilising experience internally and externally. So we've partnered up with a number of groups, including Pan UK. which are essentially a London-based group working with boroughs that want to be glyphosate-free to make sure we're trying to get as much knowledge as possible. We did, in the last 2 weeks, receive the instruction to start with glyphosate, and we commenced yesterday. So, how are we going to be doing it this year? Week 1, which is essentially as of the 1st of July, we have 2 operatives with quad bikes equipped with knapsack sprayers who will be attending to 2 wards simultaneously over 4 working days. There will also be some support from a 3rd quad and also knapsack sprayers, so there'll be areas where quads can't get to or we don't feel it's safe for them to go, so that will be some operatives on foot. In the 2nd week, so this is following the initial spray, we will then inspect each ward. The reason for that is to determine how successful the spray has been. I think we are starting a little bit late on the spray this year. If you're going to do a treatment of this kind, or almost any treatment, you want to do it earlier in the season when the weeds are younger. Some of the weeds are quite tall now, so actually I don't think the glyphosate will necessarily work, so that's why we'll still have teams out there removing the weeds manually. But the inspections will happen in the next week, and the idea then is to, through those inspections, identify where we need to direct the follow-up resource to go to clear the worst weeds. Week 3 is when we have an additional 20 operatives on the network, 2 teams of 10, essentially 1 in each ward, which will be taking that advice that's been given from the inspections and targeting the worst roads. So again, there should not be an impression that after we've sprayed and we've attended, there'll be no weeds left in those wards. There will be, but we'll be addressing the worst ones first. Up until then, because we have the additional operatives in, and we've had them in since January, we've been attending the strategic routes. This is mechanical, manual removal of roads on strategic routes, which, to be honest, need it. They have to try some weeds as well. So that's good experience for the operatives to work together and develop team ethic. And I guess in the process over the last few months, we've done 100 roads through manual removal, so that's all weeds being removed, swept and brushed as well. First 2 wards to be treated will be Hounslow East and Hounslow Central, and then we'll be following on to Hounslow West and Hounslow Heath. Just visually, and sorry, I appreciate you may not be able to see this. This is just a visual demonstration of the order of attendance. So essentially the blue, I guess it looks purple up there, right in the middle of the map is the first 2 wards that we'll be attending. And then we'll be moving on to the orange either side, and then the green, and then the red. I have another graphic. I'm happy to send this presentation out. I appreciate that people have questions, and I'm completely open about everything that's on here. My apologies again, you can't read this. I didn't appreciate how small the slide would be. But I guess if we're looking at it, so Chiswick are the 3 at the bottom of the table. So essentially the spraying will start, we've said the 20th of August, which is obviously some way away because it's at the back end of the program as the operatives move through. Based upon the performance that we're seeing at the moment, I think we'll be ahead of that. So the blue is essentially the first spray. The grey is then when the inspection would follow, which is a week later, 4 working days later. And then the red, pink, on the right-hand side, is when the 20 operatives will be in the attendance. Again, I'll send this out. This is just visually showing how that works. So the blue is the spray, the green is the inspection, the red is the attendance. A lot of thought has had to go into this program. I know people think it's easy, you just get some guys on quads out there and do it. We have to be methodical about how we do it. We have to be careful. So, for example, with the quads, we have to ensure that they don't go in pedestrian areas, which we feel is unsafe. We need to ensure that they're staying away from things like schools during peak hours. We need to keep them safe. So we have had to put thought into how we attend this. So I guess just to summarize some of those points, the first spray will take 8 to 10 weeks. Second cycle, so there'll be 2 sprays this year, would commence around September, and that will go on through to October. And we expect to conclude the program by November. Just a point, we did intend to start this on the 1st of May, like I said, when the weed growth would be in its infancy, but for various reasons we've been able to do that. But I think the first spray and then the second spray should hopefully have maximum effect. Manual removal teams will target the most prominent weed growth, regardless of the effectiveness of the glyphosate. So those inspections we do in week 2, if they show that a road has the most prominent weed growth, and the glyphosate hasn't worked, we'll still be attending that. We need to deal with the weed issue. This isn't a trial to look at the success of glyphosate. We condensed the resource down. Like I said, we were going to do a 1st of May start date. It's now July, 1st of July. So essentially, we're putting more resource in a shorter time period to catch up with that backlog. And the purpose also is to gather data and information as we go through this program to determine its success and inform next year's strategy. As with the 5 trials that we're doing at the moment, so for example, tomorrow we're doing the trial of the salt solution. We are inspecting that road. We've identified 5 roads that we'll be attending. We've made sure that those 5 roads, as with all trials, will have a mixture of 3 ASP footways and 2 asphalt footways. We're making sure that they're swept and cleared, and then we're doing inspection photos the day before, the day after, 1 week after, and then 4 weeks after to determine the effectiveness. It is important that whatever we do this year, we're not just reacting, we're planning for how we deal with it next year. And that is the end of my slides.
Tim, thank you very much for that. I just want to say that presentation is very small, not Tim's fault at all. It will be available online on the online agenda after this meeting, so on the Hounslow Council website. Anyone wants details, we can of course give those afterwards as well. Any questions? Yes, lots of hands. All right, I think you were first, sir, and we will get a microphone to you. Someone will.
Hi, Tim. I live in Alwyn Avenue, which is north of the 316. Thank you for your presentation. It provided a lot of information which I didn't expect, and I'm encouraged that you are trialling different methods of keeping the weeds under control. My concern is this year that some of the money that's been put into these trials, etc., may be not as effective because a lot of the weeds will have already, by the time you come to do the treatments, will have set seed. Those seeds will already be into the cracks and holes and into the ground, and they'll be lying there ready to germinate next year. And I was saying to Ron earlier, before this evening started, that because we're having the warmer winters now and there's less frosts, I think you need to be starting these treatment programs probably towards the end of March, beginning of April, when the young seedlings are starting to germinate. That's the time to start trying to tackle them. By leaving them to where they are today, particularly in Alwyn Avenue, we have thistles that are, the seeds are being dispersed by wind. We have birds that will pick up seeds and those will go through them and they won't be ingested. They will come out the other end and they are being spread, as we speak. And I really feel like, although you're doing this with the best intentions, it's a little bit too late. And forgive the pun, I really think the council need to grasp the nettle and really put a lot of more effort and resources into dealing with this problem.
I agree. Part of the conversation we're having about weeds now is I don't think anybody has an issue with us doing it manually. It is a laborious, painstaking task. We had a crew on one road last 2 weeks. I think they spent 1 week on one road, and that was 6 operatives clearing weeds. It was kind of old ASP, trying to dig it out. And it's almost futile because 5-6 weeks later they'll come back. So we have been investing an awful lot of resources. It was never a cost-saving exercise to go glyphosate in the first place, and it certainly hasn't saved money, but we've had to look at it and say, well, if we spend the money there, what else can't we do? So it's the reality of economics that we have to find a solution. I think, is it fair to say it's a reality that glyphosate will be restricted at some point in the future? It has elsewhere. So I think there is also a point in saying, well, it may eventually come. They may restrict glyphosate, maybe not for rural, but maybe for urban, maybe in front gardens. So we have to get ahead of it. The trials we're doing now, I agree, it'd be better if we did them earlier. We've done a lot of work, and we've actually done it part-funded with Innovate UK to look at solutions, because whoever finds the solution that isn't glyphosate is going to make an awful lot of money. So there's a lot of companies out there trying it, and we need to give them the opportunity through not just a couple of, a one-day trial on half a road, but we're giving them 5 roads. And the trial for the 5 roads for each solution is to say, right, you've all got the same space, you've all got the same type of road. Now let's test your productivity. Let's test your viability in an urban environment. Because a lot of the solutions we've looked at actually are okay in agriculture, but they're not safe to use in an urban environment. And that includes, so we tried electrification of weeds, which has some success, but you can use it in a street where you touch a pedestrian guardrail and it sends 5,000 volts through it. So a lot of thought really has gone into everything we're doing, and I do agree we could be doing more. I do think that we have given jointly a tremendous amount of commitment to it, and no one is saying that, right, that's it, we're using glyphosate. But we do have to do what we can. If that means I can get a trial in now, with the company coming in, trying to invest it with me and measure success of that, but at least they're all being measured at the same time, on the same kind of road, then that's a start. And then next year we'll probably do a more extensive trial on the ones that look like they have some success. Okay?
More hands. The lady over there in the blue, if we can get her a microphone. Can we just give you a microphone first? Sorry. Thank you.
I'm probably a lone voice in here, but I honestly don't think we should be spraying poison around the area. We're trying to encourage wildlife in this area. What is this doing? It's killing everything. What is wrong with weeds? We can clear them up, but poison, glyphosate, is that serious? I don't understand why. We have hedgehogs, we have birds, this country is suffering from a decimation of wildlife life and bird life, and this is contra to that premise. I really am terribly upset about it, because glyphosate is a poison not just to wildlife but to us, and you're happily spraying it around the place. We're going to breathe it in as well. I mean, if anybody thinks, well, they don't care about the weeds or the birds or the animals, but they care about themselves, I imagine. It's poison.
Tim.
You're not a lone voice. I think most people do agree with your sentiment. I do have to defend the record of the council and ourselves in terms of we are one of the few boroughs in the country that's been glyphosate free for 5 years, and we really have tried at it. But we do have to get that balance right. So there are negatives to the chemicals. There is, I'm sure if you look at it, there's case history in America and other places about what effects glyphosate may have. We measure the risks of that. It is a chemical, so the people that have been trained on it have had a 5-day training course to ensure they understand the quantities, the mixtures. I'm putting people to work using the chemicals, so I need to ensure that they're safe when they do it as well. So from a safety perspective, the person that's spraying it is probably the most at risk. And I wouldn't be doing that if and the scientific evidence said that for the amount of their usage, they are safe. But we have not given up on alternative treatments. We do have to get the balance right with maintaining the safety and the condition of the highway. Because if we don't do something at a certain point, we'll start digging up roads and footways and resurfacing them. And that will have a carbon impact to what we're doing as well. So we have to consider the longer term impact to what we're doing today.
Properly the balance, because I've seen the guys spraying, they're in almost hazmat suits and we're not.
They do have protective equipment, but they are using the chemical all the time. So we do have to add an extra layer of protection.
Can we go to the gentleman 2 next, in the white, just there?
Sufficient.
David Blackburn. I live in Bedford Park Conservation Area. I have 2 points to make. I understand the point about wildlife, but we also have to deal with the consequences of pavements that are impassable, that are dangerous, that trip people up. And the consequences of not dealing with weeds are serious. We are talking about compromises. If these chemicals are applied properly, I don't think there is a great deal of risk. there's a much greater risk that people will crack their heads open, walk in the middle of the road, and create a severe safety hazard. And I'm involved with the Bedford Park Society, and we get loads of complaints about the state of the pavements. And frankly, they're dangerous, quite a number of them. So my second question, which is very quick, is why did it take so long to work out that letting weeds grow without proper control was not a good idea? Thank you.
If I answer the second question first, if that's okay. We have been taking the last 5 years to understand the evidence of what we're doing, and we would be happy to keep doing it the way we were. But as I've said, the treatment that we do at the moment takes a lot longer to get round, which means that there's more seeding, there's more growth, there's more germination. So we're looking at a stopgap to get some control. So we have a weed management strategy, which means we're managing weeds, we're not necessarily killing them as we go. And we feel that we've been doing the best job we can. But we feel that also if we don't do something to prevent that future seeding and germination, next year will be even worse. Regarding the pavement condition, aside from weeds, obviously we have fixed my street. If you feel that there is a location which is unsafe or a trip hazard, then please report it through and we will investigate and action.
If I can just add, we didn't stop using glyphosate. Glyphosate was still being used on invasive and dangerous species. What we did do 5 years ago in 2019 is stop using it on the highway. But like Tim said, we've used those last 5 years' experience and data to realize that what we were doing, like Tim just said, we were managing weeds, we weren't removing or killing weeds. What we're doing this year is effectively will lead on to the next couple of years of strategy of how we manage hard surface weeds. In saying that, we will still be using glyphosate on those invasive and dangerous species. So that hasn't stopped, that's gone on. What I would also say is that there are a number of boroughs that say they are weed chemical free, but we know they're not. Hounslow is legitimately one of the only boroughs in London, possibly the country, other than Brighton until recently, that was general use chemical free.
Lady in the grey.
I understand from reading that Hounslow Council approved the use of glyphosate in February, and you're saying tonight you've only just started using it. You're starting in Hounslow and you won't get to Chiswick till sort of towards the end of August, by which time, I don't know if you've looked, I live around here, I don't know if you've looked when you were on your way here, it's like the Wild West out there. It's like tumbleweed, it's growing out the roads, it's growing from the pavements, it's growing from people's boundary walls. I haven't seen hide nor hair of anyone manually trying to remove weeds since last year or trying other alternatives that you talk about. Why is it that we have to wait so long to get any action done around here?
There was a delay. Like I said, we did have a plan and start on the 1st of May. It is an emotive topic, so my understanding is that there was a healthy conversation to ensure that they felt that the decision was right because it was emotive. We have been preparing so to ensure that time wasn't lost. Even though I didn't have a formal instruction, we've been training and we've had essentially quad bikes in our depot for a period of months to make sure that we were ready to go when the instruction came through. So the decision making around when it was given, I think is down to a very emotive decision that affects 288,000 people, and they wanted to make sure they got that right. Regarding why Chiswick is in the back of the program, I guess I have to answer why we started where we did. So this is something we haven't done in a while. We trained our operatives up safely. We've also got some good subcontractors working with us. I wanted to keep them centrally around my depot to ensure that they were supported and essentially we could meet and check what they were doing. And then we just emanated from there. There was no intention to leave Chiswick till last. And it doesn't mean that we're not doing anything on weeds. Like I said, we have the 20 operatives as well as all the others on the network. If there is a road or footway that you feel cannot wait because it's obstructive, then we will still go and remove it manually. We're not waiting for the chemical treatment, we're still getting on and doing what we do.
Sam, I'm going to come to you, and then if we can keep these to sort of 30-ish seconds, because I want to get everyone in, and then we'll come to the councillors, but Sam first.
Right, 2 questions. The damage to the pavements, have we any idea all across the borough how much additional work, the cost of additional work putting the pavements up to the standard that contractually you're required to leave them? And the other question is, how long is it going to take to get the pavements back to the standard which they're supposed to be?
So in terms of additional cost, in terms of pavement repairs and weeds, I think it's fair to say it's negligible at this point in time. We do various kinds of inspections. We have safety inspections which would pick up safety defects, but then we have condition inspections which essentially look at the deterioration of the roads and the footways. And what we've noticed from those inspections over the last few years, from the data we've gathered, is that some of the footway scorings are getting worse and worse. And then just visually we know from operatives mechanically removing, chipping away at the asphalt, it's causing a slow deterioration. And that's why when I talk about the weed management strategy, this isn't a 2025 strategy. This is what we do for 2027, 2028. It's about keeping the growth down, not necessarily getting rid of all weeds. But if we don't do something, those scores will get worse and worse, and we will end up resurfacing. Does that answer the question?
The lady in the white t-shirt, then we'll come to you, Carolyn, afterwards.
Hello, I live in Grove Park. You've got lots of weeds. I agree with a lot of the comments on both sides of the thing about safety and preserving a sort of chemical-free area. Is there any way that we can avoid having this happen near our houses? For example, if we weeded our own things, would the operatives refrain from spraying around our houses?
So this question came up at the last area forum in Brentford about, could residents do more? Would we support that? If I'd known, I would have brought 50 hose and brooms with me and let you get at it. This only works, and everything that we do only works with resident support. We get 42,000 cries a year, and 50% of that's fly tipping. If we had less fly tipping, we would be able to devote more time to doing other things. So yes, if residents wants to clear what outside their house, then when we get there to spray, there'll be nothing to spray. If, for example, and we've done this over the last few years, one of the things we trialed, a resident group, community group wants to get involved and clear weeds in a road, we'll come along, we'll help out, we'll provide the materials, and we'll provide some operatives to show our support for it. So anything like that. A lot of the treatments we've talked about, whether it be foam stream or something else, are good things, but they don't work everywhere. So we need a little bit of everything to help us keep the area looking the way we want it to, and that includes weed control.
Carolyn. There's one coming.
Thank you very much. I've got one comment and a couple of very quick yes/no questions. One of the problems where I am at the end of Staveley Gardens is that the curbs are full of grass because the Hounslow Council's housing department leave all the mowing behind on the grass curbs, so all the weeds and all the grass then goes onto the road and creates a problem. I'm a great believer in wildlife. I've certainly seen a huge increase where I am since everything has been left to grow. Very quickly, I'm concerned about the effect possibly on domestic animals. I have a cat, they walk on things, they lick their paws. The other question is, will you spray in all weathers? So if it's a howling gale, do you still spray? And do you remove what you've sprayed or just leave them there?
Okay, in order. Any standard treatment for grass cutting should include blowing back the grass onto the verge. So if they're not doing that, then I think it's a question of... That could be maybe on the first cut. It's quite long, possibly, I don't know. But, for example, for us, we have cleansing crews and sweeper crews that can go out, so we can send a sweeper down the road to pick up any residue. So maybe it's something to put to your housing officer if it's a housing land. In that case, definitely put it to a housing officer. Okay. We'll take a note and pick that up. To knowledge, there is no issue in terms of safety of cats, dogs, that kind of thing. When they spray, it's very quick, in the sense of they'll spray and it will dry off quickly. They only spray in dry weathers. For example, we've got some rain, no point in spraying when it's rained because the chemical won't hold. The RAMs, so the risk assessment and method statement they have, talks about not spraying in high weathers because of the blowback of the spray. And when you spray it, it's not going to go on the weed, it's going to go elsewhere. So the whole method, the training that we talked about is about how to spray safely and how to use as less as possible. So the program I talked about was spray, inspect, remove. You need to wait a few weeks for the glyphosate to take effect because you want the chemical, and any solution you have, to go through the stem system and try and kill the root. There's no point in trying to remove it before that, otherwise you keep the root and then you keep the regrowth for next year. So removal is there, but it's 2 to 4 weeks later.
Shall we I think we've answered that one.
Maybe a question for after.
Right. Very quickly, one more, and then we're going to come to councillors, because I've already failed in my chair's duty of moving this on until 8:35.
Hi, I live in Grove Park. I'm shocked, actually, that you've had to, I guess, been forced into this decision to use this toxic chemical, which has already been banned in other places. In fact, in 2019, you made the correct call, which is this has already been banned in Europe. It's going to come here. It will happen eventually here. As we've seen with many other chemicals, eventually the government will get around to banning it, and then you'll be faced with exactly this situation. The encouraging thing about what you said, Tim, is that you are actually exploring alternatives, because I guess you know that this is coming down the road. But in the meantime, it's really quite sad that we're having to, if you like, accept the toxicity of a chemical, a known toxicity of a chemical, in order to keep our pavements looking a bit better and maybe obviously obviating some of the problems which you've outlined very clearly will come from weeds growing. But we really need to get used to the idea that we will not have this chemical as a weapon against weeds. So either we have to learn to live with weeds slightly more, which I suspect many of us will be quite happy to do, or you have to find, as you're exploring, some other alternatives. And the sooner, the better.
All right. Councillors, I'm guessing, I thought there'd be a lot. Yeah, there are. Now there are. John, you were first.
I'm a councillor for some years. I've posed questions to the central authority about whether they're using it or not. I'm not sure what the council's policy is, if there is one. We're told by Hounslow Highways tonight that they've got, or in an email to me, that they have 18 operatives being trained with hose. Yet a cabinet paper early on indicated that we were going to use a drug that we consider. I find it baffling that we're using hose. I'm not a gardener, not an expert, but every time I watch television at night, there are people doing their patios with machines that may be a lot quicker. Is there no mechanical alternative? It seems such an obvious solution, and watching your men doing it with hose seems akin to torture, quite frankly.
So one of the biggest issues we have with weed removal actually isn't the weed, it's the fact it's an urban environment where 70% of residents park on the street. So you're trying to remove weeds at the back of the footway or between the channel and the curb. A lot of the mechanical offers need those cars removed. We did something called Deep Cleanse, which we actually stopped. Don't know why, we need to redo it. Clear all the cars off the road, go in, sweep it, do the gullies, do the trees, everything at the same time. But this is about productivity. So how many rows can I do if I try and remove the cars? And it's simply not enough at this point in time. You're weighing off the cost benefits of trying to put the people on the ground and get the best out of the mechanical. We have trialled it, and we're still trying it. I know one of the trials we're doing this year is a strimmer brush. We've also tried those brushes on our mechanical sweepers with some success, to be fair. It's a different kind of brush, and it's good at pulling out some of the weeds, probably does about 50%, but again, it only really works when you've got the cars off the road. So we'll happily employ the mechanical items, but we need to get to the weed first, and unfortunately that is the one obstruction. It's one of the issues we have with foam stream, which is it works, but you've got to clear all the cars off, you need a 7.5-ton vehicle, you've got to heat the water, and when you try and do that across what is 91 kilometers of network, double, because it's both sides of the road, it's not really viable from a productivity perspective.
We're just... I think Tim's answered that one, but...
I just say we're here because you have the right to be informed about what we're doing, and it's a passionate topic. But yes, we have started spraying yesterday.
Can we just keep it with councillors for now? Gerald, I think you were next. We had about 20 minutes of discussion from the audience first.
It's not free for all.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There was a correlation between the number of complaints made by Chiswick residents and the outcomes of the exercise. It seems to me that perhaps Chiswick is being picked on because we are last in the queue, but we've also made the most complaints. And there's another correlation between the number of complaints and those who have a bigger stake in Hounslow, because the majority of us here are paying a larger sum of income to the council than other residents in Hounslow. So I feel we're being twice trammeled. First of all, because we are people who make complaints because we have a bigger stake. We are being trammeled because there are people who are making more complaints because we have a bigger stake in Hounslow, we pay more council tax. And we're also being trammeled because the number of complaints we're making is not being regarded as useful.
I cannot answer questions about political targeting or anything else. My decisions are based upon the science that I have and the contract that I have to maintain the roads of Hounslow, not just now, but we actually had our half anniversary on the 30th of June, so we've done 12.5 years, we have 12.5 years to go. So every decision we make is actually about a long-term strategy, and that was the PFI was set up for. It was about taking the condition, the footways and the carriageways of Hounslow, which were bottom 20% of London in 2012, and making them one of the top 3 for the last 7 years. So every decision we make is about maintaining that now, keeping Hounslow in terms of the carriageway, footway condition as best we can, and then working with the communities to do what we can, and informing them. People here may not agree with the decision that we have made, but you have a right to understand why we've made it that way. The fact that you don't agree with it is absolutely correct. I just want you to understand that this isn't a light decision, it is something we've put some thought into.
Councillor Biddulph.
Thank you. I'd like just to be sure that we all understand the same things. I'd like some clarity. You've made a couple of statements this evening which I think raise hopes, and I suspect might mean that some of them are dashed. You're going to do an inspection, and you said that you would do the roads with the worst weeds, and I think that needs to be explained. I think it's a bit like potholes and pavements, where you've got a threshold that has to be met, and some people might not get their potholes and their pavements fixed because they don't meet the thresholds. And that leads me into the second point, which you made about pavements, which is reported on Fix My Street, there will be actions. And there aren't always actions. So can you give us some example, some explanation about what the worst weeds means? I think that the worst weeds are in Chiswick Gunnersbury ward. I'm sure that Homefields and Riverside feel the worst weeds are in their wards on certain roads. What does it actually mean, and what can we expect?
So to make the best use of the resource that we have, as per the programme, we'll spray, we'll inspect, and then we'll identify With the time available to the operatives to try and stay on programme, so 10 operatives, they'll be given a number of roads that they get around 5 days to clear. So it'll be the worst roads that they can clear in 5 days. After that 5 days, they move on. Because if we don't move on, we don't give the next ward the attention it's due, which is why I'm trying to manage expectations. Do not think that there'll be no weeds in Hounslow after the first treatment, because that isn't what this is about. This is about less weeds next year. So prioritisation will be visual. It'll be based upon people that we know and we trust, our stewards and our supervisors, understand what the crews can achieve with the time available, and we'll be looking at things like obstruction of footways and trip hazards and that kind of thing. As for footway defects, when you report something through, so a pothole or something like that, a steward, an inspector will attend, and we'll look at, we talk about thresholds, because people think, oh, if it's 25 mil, then we'll do it. Not necessarily. It's about looking at where that defect is. So for example, is it near a school or a hospital? Is it on a main thoroughfare? Is it a lot of footfall on it? That will determine, along with the depth, the location of that defect and where it is in the carriageway footway, where it gets done. So it's not a simple hard measure. It's not saying it's that big, that deep, it gets done. But when you do a defect, it's not just about is it bad now, it's about saying will that deteriorate? So is it worth doing a little bit now to stop us doing a lot later?
So on the weeds, just so I understand, are you saying you're going to do the worst roads first, which you're going to be doing all the roads with weeds on them? Is that what you're saying?
No. We have to be realistic with what we can achieve with the resource we have available. Again, this is about how much money we all have and what we can put into it. We'll do the best we can with the resource we have available for the 5 days, 4 days in that ward. And then we'll move on. And then on the second cycle, we'll come back. We will have additional teams which will still go out and work outside of the programme, where someone puts in a complaint about a road and says that's really bad. We're not going to worry when the programme says to do it. We're going to go out and deal with that one anyway.
Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tim, for the presentation. You explained that you started this program late, but next year, if I'm correct, from the slide, you said you're going to start it in April. Is that right? Yeah?
I'll do that one. Councillor Gill, thank you for the question. So, like Tim said, we're using this year's exercise as a data gathering exercise. When it comes to the end of the weed season, if there is an end for a weed season, we're hoping that's going to be in November, December time, we'll use all that information to inform how we do things next year.
Right, okay. Because I saw on the slide you said that 2026 you're going to start in April.
Well, April's just the beginning of the financial year.
Right.
That's the reason why that's there. But
all right. Yeah, I understand you had your program and you had to have the operatives near to where you started so that you can actually see what they're doing. And unfortunately, Chiswick landed up right at the bottom. So, as Councillor McGregor has said, you know, it's an unfortunate event that Chiswick always lands up at the bottom. It's not a choice or whatever, but I understand that you had to have the operatives to see that they're actually doing work properly. Now, you said you would deal with roads where the weeds are really bad. Now, how bad is it going to be for you to come out? How do you classify that? I mean, the residents might say in Grove Park, for instance, you heard, they said it's bad. So if the resident says it's bad, are you going to take the resident's word, or are you going to have some criteria to identify what is bad?
So the good thing about Fix My Street is we often get photos, so we can make that assessment sometimes from the photos, but most of the time I will be sending a steward, an inspector or a supervisor to make that assessment. For what one resident may be bad, for another resident might not be. Just in terms of Chiswick, Chiswick does get a lot of additional attention. So for example, it's got more mechanical sweeping because it's got cycle lanes. It gets more attention during the leafal season, nearly all of the leafal resources in Chiswick. So we do move the resource to where the priorities are.
Right, we have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Can we've got, your question's been answered. Can we go to Councillor Croft and then Councillor, is that okay? I'm sorry, I just want to, yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. Mine is really quick. Thank you very much. Absolutely, it's a really emotive subject for everybody. I just wanted to ask the point you made about residents' associations that might want to get involved with weeding their own areas for reasons of not wanting them sprayed, how would they go about contacting your team to get resources and organise that? Thank you.
So go through Fix My Street. We already have good contacts with a lot of residents associations and lay assessors. So if you're already part of one, then they'll probably already know us and they've got our business management email address. One thing I will say is we have great interaction with residents and residents groups. There's really prominent ones like CAG and HAG, which are very large, but smaller residents associations as well. So it's something we do commonly. And then we will just simply deliver the equipment to your address. You'll tell us what you've done, where the bag's left, and we'll pick it up.
Councillor Thompson, and then we'll wrap up.
It's not really a question, it's just an observation. It is, as Councillor Croft said, this is a very emotive subject. And we've heard words tonight like poison and toxicity and so on and so forth. And I think we just need to get a bit of a balance at times. I think many of our household products are toxic and poisonous if they're used in the wrong place and at the wrong amount. And I think we can't ignore the fact that every single government agency here and in the EU, I know you said earlier about they're going to ban it, but they haven't banned it yet, and there's no plans to ban it or even review it, I think, until 2035. So I think there is a slight concern whenever we get onto language of science and chemicals that it becomes poison and we perhaps create fears and concerns that need not be there. I think it is telling that we are, as you said, and I think it was good that we gave this a try, one of the only authorities in the country that gave it a go. And I can't hand on heart believe that all the other 250 odd local councils are doing something that they knowingly think is poisoning residents, is affecting the dogs and cats and all the rest of it. But I think we do need to be sensitive, obviously, like you said, around schools. I think the manual stuff is quite effective around the lampposts, streamers, whatever else you want to use. But I think ultimately we can't go on as we have been. And I think there's a realistic recognition of that across all aspects of the council. So I'm pleased you're doing it in quite a measured sort of way. I did see, I suppose this is my question, I'll get there eventually. Brighton, obviously they were also with us and they decided, I think last year, to reintroduce it. But they're doing a very sort of minimal approach, just sort of spot spraying, very localised. Is that a thing we've looked at, or are we just going to spray, I won't say willy-nilly on affected roads, but is it just sort of, quite localised focus to avoid any residents' concerns? Because the last thing we want to do is create the impression, and we've heard it tonight, that we are poisoning people.
I wouldn't be doing it if in any way I thought I'd be not just poisoning people, but my own staff. I don't know how you do spot spraying when you have weed growth as rampant as it has been here and in Brighton. So again, to manage expectations, we will be spraying every road. We'll be careful about how we do it. We're trying to minimize it, if only from a cost perspective. Don't want to waste the chemical. But again, whatever we don't get, then we'll regrow next year. So we will be as careful as we can.
Right. Tim and Seville, thank you very much. You've been very generous with your time. That was an hour-long discussion. I promised you 20 minutes, but I think it was good that we got as many people as we could and had that discussion. There will be an open forum at the end if there are any additional questions for councillors, but we are going to move on. But thank you very much for coming and answering those questions so thoroughly. Right. This is an additional item on the agenda now on Gunnersbury Park. Could I bring Lorien and David Bowler up? Thank you. And some clearing as well. Right, just whilst we switch over and some people switch around, this is agenda item 5, and I just want to give some quick context to this agenda item as we'll be following a slightly different format to usual. So a few weeks ago we were asked by residents if we could add this as an urgent agenda item given a number of issues with recent events at Gunnersbury Park. In addition to a discussion on this topic, residents have submitted a written question to the council in advance of the meeting. I will read that question out, and then I will read out a written response from the council laying out their position. I'm then going to invite 4 speakers from the floor who've notified me of their intention to speak, and each will have 3 minutes. I'm then going to ask David Bowler, CEO of Gunnersbury Estate CIC, and Lorien Kelly, Head of Regulatory Services at Hounslow Council, to respond. I'm then going to open it up to councillors who, again, I would ask to be brief in their comments and questions, and then give Lorien and David the opportunity to respond to any new points raised. Before we start, I do just want to give thanks to residents who raised this with me, both via local ward councillors and directly, and thanks to David and Lorien for taking the time to be here and to respond directly. This is an important topic. I know everyone's going to approach it with respect and civility, but just as a reminder, we want to get to a resolution. We don't want to clash in any way. So, without further ado, if that makes sense, I'm going to take a sip of water because there is a lengthy statement that I have to read from the council. So I want to read out, first of all, the question which residents submitted to me a couple of weeks ago. Residents asked, given the growing number of serious concerns raised by residents about the rapid escalation in the number and scale of private events at Gunnersbury Park, including breaches of the covenant, exceeding the 28-day planning limit, loss of public access, inadequate safety enforcement, and lack of financial transparency, will the council fulfil its democratic duty as both landlord and licensor by committing to a full review of the premises licence? I will now read the response from the council, and then we'll go to speakers. This is 2 sides, so bear with me. The council says the following. Gunnersbury Park and Museum are an important part of the borough's history and cultural infrastructure. As well as providing a space for residents and visitors to enjoy, the park also hosts a number of events which enrich the borough's cultural offer and profile, draw in tourism, and financially support the management of the site, which is key to the agreement between the council and the CIC. Hounslow Council, like councils across the country, is facing serious financial challenges because of underfunding from central government and increased demand and costs for services. More and more of our budget has to be spent on statutory services such as adult and children's social care, which means we need to find other ways to fund non-statutory services like parks and historic houses. The council is having to look at reducing financial support to organisations who manage large assets like parks and gardens and encourage them to find different ways to cover costs. Commercial event hires are just one way in which Gunnersbury Estate CIC generates income to fund the upkeep of a large historic park, which requires significant maintenance costs and investment. We are, however, keen to ensure that the events are appropriate for the setting and well managed, and work with the CIC on their event plans. This includes challenging activity which breaches agreed standards and regulations. We know there were a number of issues during a recent Crank Brother event, despite the submission of good event management plans and prior engagement with the organisers. We are aware that the CIC has also expressed dissatisfaction and are taking up these matters with the event provider and will not consider further hires from the organisers unless a credible improvement plan is put forward. All feedback received by the council will be fed into the formal event debrief. With regards to concerns around exceeding the planning limit, Gunnersbury CIC have 28 days of permitted change of use, which they use to hold events. A planning application is submitted for each additional event in excess of these 28 days, ensuring they go ahead with appropriate planning permission. We are aware there have been many complaints and information requests from a few residents regarding the management and maintenance of Gunnersbury Park. Council officers are working to respond fully to these complaints, which requests, which, due to the complexity and volume, is taking some time. That was lengthy. So there is a copy that will be available if you leave your email addresses either with me or with an officer, and I'm happy to send that in full. I did provide that response to speakers, both Dave and Lorien and the 4 speakers we have in the room as well. So I would like now to invite the 4 speakers, as I say, 3 minutes each. If we take each in turn, then we'll come over to David and Lorien. So Mr. Neil Boot, please, if we can give him a microphone. I think he's fine. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Full disclosure, I'm a resident of Ealing Common, not Hounslow, but this is the only forum we have at the moment for me to say a few words. Thanks for the opportunity to do so. I've been visiting Gunnersbury Park regularly for over 30 years, and it's a place I can unashamedly say that I love. A welcome respite from city life, a great place to walk the dogs, one of our city's precious green spaces. But let's acknowledge that Gunnersbury was shamefully neglected for the bulk of those years by a dysfunctional duo of neighbouring councils. Until the lottery grant was awarded a few years ago, the park was very much a poor relation to other local parks, down to nothing other than a scandalous management of avoidable decline. The lottery grant was warmly welcomed and many good things followed. But I very much doubt that when the lottery fund made the grant, it envisaged what the park has now become through the summer months. Question. What has happened since is a travesty, one that has led me to a heartbreaking decision to avoid the park from June to September, because the transformation of the park into a summer-long event venue changes the park's character and the experience of visiting in such a negative way. It's no longer a green public space, no longer a peaceful haven for nature. At the heart of that travesty lies the decision the two councils made to outsource their responsibilities to a community interest company, so-called, tasked with maximising revenues from commercial activity and enabled and encouraged to do so under the auspices of a shoddy licence and a lease designed to shield the council from complaints, denying FOI requests, deflecting sincere concerns and complaints from neighbours and regular users over 3 to 4 years, not a few neighbours, as the CIC likes to characterise. Perhaps the CIC should be commended, actually, for the extent of the commercial exploitation it's imposed on the park, because after all, that's what the licence from the council mandates. Gunnersbury Park now sits under an undemocratic and unaccountable structure, still significantly funded by council taxpayers, that flies in the face of the council's own stated aims to put consultation and engagement of the community at the heart of its ethos. It's cowardly because it allows the council to sidestep its responsibilities as landlord, and it embeds a glaring conflict of interest. The council accrues financial benefits and at the same time is incentivised to ignore the duties to neighbours, to wildlife, to regular users, and provides no transparencies as to the true cost of these events when park damage, increased overhead, traffic chaos, strain on policing, and antisocial behaviour are factored in.
Can I just 30 seconds, if that's all right.
You can stop me, you can try. Nor how, I will do my best, Chair, I apologise, I'm emotional. Nor how the CIC's spiring multi-million-pound admin budget is spent. The welcome recent change of policy to seek planning permission beyond the 28-day statutory limit smacks of lip service, as the council appears to be pushing through consents without due process. We only have to look at the latest event to confirm some events are clearly unsuitable for the setting. The licence should be reviewed, local people listened to, so that a reasonable balance can be struck and a more accountable, transparent and democratic approach worked out. Yes, Gunnersbury Park was shamefully neglected for decades, but what's happening now is also neglectful and it's more egregious. The main beneficiaries of the monetisation of the misery inflicted on the local community are the council, the CIC and rapacious corporations who I know well. I spent 40 years working in the music industry, and private equity interests who now monopolise that industry. This council patently prioritises their interests and those of paying guests, mostly from out of borough, over those of local people. Enough is enough.
Is that all right? Thank you very much. Could I now invite Andrew Stevens, who I think is going to speak on behalf of the Gunnersbury Garden Estate Residents Association. 3 minutes, please, Andrew.
I'll be as quick as I can. Good evening. Evening to the Chair, councillors, fellow members of the public. As mentioned, my name's Andrew Stevens. I represent the Gunnersbury Park Garden Estate Residents Association that is across the road from Gunnersbury Park. We're not here to stop festivals, we're here to stop a system that has created disruption and damage, and to ask for your assistance to help restore balance, transparency and respect for the law. Gunnersbury Park, our community's shared green space, has now become a commercial arena for months each year, with the managing community investment company only tasked with maximising revenue from commercial activities, not for looking after the park for the local residents. In 2025 alone, the park is slated to be hired out for 96 operational days, over 3 months, which is almost triple the legal 28-day limit set by national planning law. That 28-day limit is not an optional item. The limit is embedded in the Town and Country Planning Act and upheld by the recent Friends of Brockwell Park versus Lambeth Council High Court ruling, which made clear that councils must treat extended festival use as a material change of use. You need planning permission and you need public consultation. But here it's licence first, planning never. No scrutiny. Events like the recent shambolic Crank Brothers Festival have already put us 2 days over the legal limit, and the upcoming Happy Place Festival has no application put in at all so far. Yet tickets have been sold up to a year in advance, effectively signalling planning will be granted without awaiting any public consultation. Residents have tried to engage constructively in the past. In the past 3 years alone, Hounslow Council received over 540 formal complaints about these events, and this excludes complaints made to Ealing Council, MPs, councillors or organiser hotlines. 2 petitions calling for a licence review gathered over 1,250 signatures. That is not a few residents. This is a community that's been ignored. Meanwhile, Hounslow and Ealing councils continue to pay £600,000 per year to the Gunnersbury CIC, yet there is no public audit of how this money is spent. Buildings under lease obligations like Potomac Tower and the stables remain derelict. Friends of Gunnersbury Park, lottery funding, Hounslow Highways and other organisations have also made funds available, and yet there is no transparency or accountability for these public funds, while the council claims it needs extra money. The damage to residential areas isn't theoretical. Residents have submitted photos, videos and FOI requests to show what this means in real life. People urinating in gardens, alleyways and on garages, drug sales in broad daylight in areas like the Ridgeway and the Triangle Green in our estate, and no police patrols where we live, only in and around the immediate area of the event, inadequate stewarding and signage around the events, no parking enforcement, events even as cars block driveways and pavements, children's play areas fenced off are very hard to access, sports fields fenced off, noise peaking at 90 decibels within the park, roads around the park blocked or delayed by Uber drivers or similar drivers after the event, regardless of any traffic management plans.
Just 30 seconds if that's all right, Andrew.
Patrons loudly walking or driving through the estate after the festivals, disrupting residents, leaving litter and generally creating disturbance. There's no transparency, no public reports and a management structure immune to public scrutiny. What message does this send? That private profit matters more than public well-being. The land is protected by the Rothschild Covenant, which has been in place for around 100 years. It was gifted for public recreation, not fenced-off profit. There has been no Section 84 application to vary that covenant for these large commercial events, meaning that these uses are unauthorised. A premises licence cannot override planning law. It cannot override the Law of Property Act, yet that's what is happening in front of our eyes and on the Council's watch. Let's be clear, we support cultural life, but real cultural life is inclusive, enriching and rooted in community. Not gated raves at £70 a ticket such as the recent Crank Brothers event, or the £315 a head members-only Soho House Festival event that's happening tomorrow. If Hyde Park, which is twice the size of Gunnersbury, can limit itself to 11 days major music events and 65 dB, then so can we. That's the standard and that's fairness. So our requests are cap major events to 28 days a year as per the law, set noise limits to 65 dB as per the POP code, matching Hyde Park, with full spectrum monitoring by the council, not private subcontractors at multiple locations. end blanket licensing and require event-by-event planning applications with proper consultation, publish transparent financial and restoration plans for the park, how many years and how many events are required to achieve a sound financial base and park restoration, 5 years, 10 years, restore public policing and basic services to affected residential streets. This is not about blocking fun, it's about upholding the law, protecting health and respecting the residents who live here and support the park year round. We ask this council to show leadership, not just for Gunnersbury, but for the legal precedent you now face.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Right, good. That's a popular one. Could I now invite Andrew Narang, please? I'm going to make the same helpless plea that I made to Andrew. 3 minutes or as close to, because it gives more time for the answer as well.
I won't be long for more than 3 minutes, but yes, I'm on Gunnersbury Lane and we face a lot of problems at the day of the events. Firstly, when they are putting the stands, that disturbs our sleep. Early in the morning, even at the last event, I couldn't sleep all night. And then people are urinating. They're double parking the cars at the behind people's garages. Drug dealing is going on where people are sitting in the car. Many cab drivers are waiting, and we don't feel safe. I mean, when I went out at 10 o'clock, there were people were staring at me and they were trying to approach me, and I just quickly drove off because I had to bring my car to behind my house. There was no space for me to park the car. Being a resident, I don't feel safe, and I don't feel my children or my family or my neighbors are safe in that sort of events. I would like to ask our local councillors, every government bodies. Last year, Joanna was stopping people to go upstairs to people's houses when I noticed her, and someone was feeling very bad about her, that she was one who was stopping people not to urinate on the side streets. I mean, I was quite surprised to what was happening there. No police, we didn't see any police people. Only the stewards were at 10 o'clock, and they were just like young kids. Anybody would have come and said anything to the young kids. They were not like, we could have felt safe with them. There was no police, we saw that. I don't know if my neighbors are going to say. They're going to say the same thing. And people are not sleeping. One of my neighbors, she collapsed last year with all this music, and the ambulance had to be called. And they don't want to be named, but the neighbors have said, we are not safe here. I think we need to move the area. I also came from Shepherd's Bush, moved to Acton because I felt that this was the best area and safe area to live in the area. But recently, years, with all this Gunnersbury Park, music, children cannot sleep. Wonder what adults we have in our area. They are very uncomfortable. Sometimes people are throwing the rubbish in our garden. This time I had to clean my own garden. There was nobody there to clean, and I thought, okay, you know what? I'm not taking it. I wish I should have taken pictures, which is not safe. I mean, I need to be safe in my own home. We don't feel the safe. The noise is so much, especially on Gunnersbury Lane. We can't sleep. I really can't sleep that. I mean, I would just ask everybody, what are you going to do for the safety of me, my family, and all the neighbors in Gunnersbury and around the surrounding areas? Not very many people want to come forward and talk about it, but whoever I talk about it, they don't want to get involved with anything. So I thought, few things, yes. It's not the councillor's job to stop people not to go upstairs and urinate. I'm especially talking about Jo. She was the one who was stopping everybody not to go. And then she had to get involved with the organizers so they can put the people that they don't go and urinate in an area. I mean, I've seen so many times, not unless we want to put these pictures on the social media and do the live of what they're doing. It's not right. We need to respect everybody.
20 seconds, if that's all right.
Please do something about the local residents and myself and my family.
Thank you very much. And finally, could I invite John Turner? Angie was great and was bang on 3 minutes, so there's your challenge.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm John Turner and I live on the Gunnersbury Park Garden Estate, have done for the last 25 years. I'm going to speak to you rather plainly and bluntly today, and that's either down to the fact that I'm Glaswegian, so I apologise, or the fact that the residents are getting tired of carefully crafted statements that hide what is actually happening in Gunnersbury Park. We are told that this is about culture, we are told that it's about funding, we are told that this is about community benefit, but what we see is different. We see a park that's public land turned into an arena for private profit. We see £600,000 of taxpayers' money going to the CIC every year, yet no public audit, no transparency, and 2.3 million marked as admin costs, while heritage buildings crumble into decay. We see 540 formal complaints in 3 years, not counting hundreds more to Ealing Council or the MPs. We see over 1,250 petition signatures calling for change. We see residents dismissed as a few. We see events booking for 96 days this year. We see the legal 28-day limit ignored. We see festivals like Crank Brothers and Happy Place breach that limit with no consequence. We see endangered bats exposed to 90 decibels. We see mature trees cut down without planning permission, shredded and used to stop mud at festivals. We see the museum stripped of its purpose, 50,000 artefacts hidden in storage, while weddings are booked with no planning application, because profit appears to come before history or culture. We see residents' garden used as toilets. We see open drug sales by our homes. We see children locked out of playgrounds. We see sport fields fenced off for months. We see no published restoration plan, no clarity on how long these sacrifices will continue, 5 years, 10 years, forever. What we don't see is any police presence in our estate during the festivals. During the Crank Brother event, the police were fully focused on crimes inside the event. Another example of inappropriate events dominating the events at the park. We see a council say there is no choice, but there's always a choice. The choice is to follow the law. The choice is to protect public land. The choice is to prioritise residents over billionaire event companies. So today, I will not ask politely, I will say what must be said. This is not lawful stewardship. This is not cultural enrichment. This is systematic neglect and commercial exploitation. We once again ask for immediate enforcement of the 28-day legal limit, planning applications for every event and wedding as required by law, a full public audit of all taxpayer funds given to Gunnersbury CIC, noise capped at 65 decibels matching Hyde Park, a clear, honest financial and restoration plan for the park's future, and we demand an urgent independent review of the entire event licence and management model. Because culture is not drug dealers in our street, culture is not £315 Soho House tickets, culture is not the silencing of local voices. This is public land. You are public servants. Do your duty, uphold the law, protect this park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we saved 10 seconds with John as well, so even better. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the four of you, and thank you to all the residents who submitted that written question as well. I want to give David Bowler and Laurie and Kelly a chance to respond. I wasn't going to put a time limit on it, but maybe under 5 minutes, if that's okay. And then we'll come to councillors. We'll take councillors in turn, and then we'll come back to you guys, if that's all right. So, please.
Okay. A wide-ranging set of concerns. I want to try and focus in the time allotted on what appeared to be some of the themes coming up. So one of the themes very clearly is issue of 28 days permitted change of use. The events that we have hosted without planning permission fit into that 28-day allotment. Any and every large-scale event outside of that has been subject to a formal planning application. So Soho House, for example, we applied for planning permission for that event in February of this year. The planning permission was actually granted at 12:30 p.m. on the Friday of last week before Soho House moved into site on Monday the 23rd. So we also have planning applications in for Festival Republic, and we have planning applications in for Waterworks. The planning regime under which the council considers those applications is what's called the major developments regime. So frankly, it's the same regime as if you were building a shopping centre. It is an exhaustive process. Each application costs the CIC Trust roughly £20,000 to make an application to host an event. So I would dispute the position around unlawful use. We are acutely conscious that we cannot have alternative uses to the parkland beyond 28 days without planning permission, and we have applied for it. Planning permission has been granted for Soho House. It has not yet been granted for Festival Republic or Waterworks. We await that decision.
Can we just stick to the answers first?
A couple of other things in terms of financial support. So the financial support from the two councils totals £500,000 this year. It's £250,000 each. When the CIC was launched in 2018, that financial support was £750,000. Applying the Bank of England inflation calculator, the real term support from the two councils has declined 48% since 2018. Our costs have not declined 48%. Therefore, a gap is appearing. The trajectory for council support under the 25-year management agreement, which the CIC has, gives provision for the council to cease all funding from 2028. So my job is to try and anticipate the fact that Gunnersbury will have to be completely self-financing potentially from 2028 because the public purse can no longer afford to make fee payments. If I could carry on.
Sorry.
I was just.
We gave 4 speakers over 15 minutes to chat. We've got to give the same respect to David and Lauren to answer that, if that's all right, because that's the way that you get an answer. Is that okay? Is that fair? Hang on. David, please.
As again, forgive me, it is a complex matter. I'm trying to talk to the big themes here. The other issue that was raised was very much about the Crank Brothers event on the 15th of June. Crank Brothers were a new operation to the park. I think it is fair to say, as Jack introduced it, we were disappointed by the performance of their management team. They did submit a very detailed event management plan. That event management plan, like all event management plans for large events in Gunnersbury Park, was run by the Council's Safety Advisory Group, the SAG. The Metropolitan Police sit on the SAG. The Metropolitan Police had 37 officers on duty during Crank Brothers. The conduct of a small percentage of the 29,000 members of the public who attended Crank Brothers, by all accounts, in public areas, fell below reasonable expectations of any member of the public. Public urination, disorder, none of that is acceptable. None of that is condoned by the charity that runs Gunnersbury Park. None of that is in fact condoned by the large corporations that run these events. But the reality of it is we have a limited ability without additional marshalling or police action in the public realm. The charity's remit is to run Gunnersbury Park. We do not have any legal locus on the public highway to deal with issues of antisocial behaviour. That does not mean I condone it. It's dreadful, and it should not happen. And the point that was made earlier about Crank Brothers coming back, they would need to provide an absolutely compelling case that they have learned. And at this moment, the material I've received from them does not, at this moment, if I can finish, the material they've submitted does not meet that threshold. The final thing, the 65 dB. The limit in our licence granted by the council is 75. We voluntarily operate at 73. That 73 dB is monitored at between 5 and 7 individual off-site monitoring points. We have 3 layers of sound monitoring. The event organiser, Vanguardia, who are a leading acoustic consultancy that we employ, and council environmental staff are on duty throughout every large event. There is no intention on anybody's part to breach a licence. It is absolutely key to the commercial success of Gunnersbury. We try and keep within our licence at every opportunity. And at every event, there is a team of licensing officers, Lorian's team, that does alcohol, food standards, and noise, not just noise. So there is a team on site the whole time. So we are regulated, and we stay within that regulatory framework. I'll stop at that point.
Thank you very much, David. Lorian, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to add a couple of points. David's already covered about the planning. There isn't an exemption. They can hold 28 days. That's under national permitted development rights. Our planning colleagues have reviewed the queries that were raised ahead of this, and they are in the process of reviewing quite a few of the FOIs that have come in. To date, they are satisfied there have been no planning breaches, and they will continue to investigate that, and residents are welcome to report any of that to our planning enforcement colleagues. There was a few comments I wanted to raise. Again, David's made it about noise. Just to clarify as well, I think it's important to put some context in. I know a few people have mentioned that Hyde Park's limit is 65 dB. Their licence is 75 dB, which is the same as Victoria Park. Sorry, if I could just finish.
Can we, sorry, hang on. Sorry, excuse me. We've made a, sorry, excuse me. We've brought David and Lorian here to answer the questions. We gave residents 15 to 20 minutes to make the case. We're not going to get answers if we're shouting over them. We have to be able to hear what they say in response to it. Is that fair? Thank you.
I appreciate it's not Gunnersbury specific, but I think it's important context. Hyde Park, Victoria Park, Clapham Common, Brockwell Park, their limit is also 75 dB. We have more stringent restrictions in Gunnersbury Park. Heaton Park's limit is actually 80 dB. In Victoria Park, they've got no limit on low frequency noise, which is not something that we do. I appreciate that might not be of your concern, but I think it's a useful context. You know, we are more stringent than a lot of similar providers. There were a couple comments about monitoring, requests for monitoring, not just by, you know, the Gunnersbury but by the council as well. That happens at absolutely every single event. I have a minimum of 3 officers who are monitoring the noise alone. As David said, we monitor licensing conditions, trading standards, food standards. I myself will be at Soho House tomorrow, along with 2 other officers, monitoring the noise. I take the point about police as well, and I think, you know, it's something that we can feed back. As David said, they do attend the SAG. I'm not here to answer for the police and why their presence wasn't there, but it's a notable concern. You know, it's not my place to answer. Something that we will be doing following the concerns from Crank Brother is our private contractor, APCOA, who many of you may be familiar with, who issue on-the-spot fixed penalty notices. We haven't utilised them before, but we will be utilising them for future events. They can issue on-the-spot fines. That would include for things like urinating. Believe it or not, that does actually count as littering. They can, you know, utilise it for dumped rubbish. And I'm more than happy if people have specific concerns, specific roads they would like those officers to monitor and patrol. We can absolutely do that. And just a final point, and I appreciate it may not be well received here, and this is a very valid, you know, voice and concern from local residents, but there are other voices. Festival Republic, for example, provide us details about who is buying the tickets. There was a comment, I think the first speaker meant that we're tailoring to mostly out of borough. That is not the case, and I'm more than happy to provide that. There is a very, very high proportion and percentage of people who attend these events that do come from the Hounslow borough. I appreciate it might be different opinions to those, but I think it's important to reflect that and say that there is a very big proportion and percentage of the borough who do attend these events. It's not just out-of-towners.
Could I also add, Jack, that over the summer we will give out 2,000 free tickets to local residents, and that ballot is oversubscribed every year.
Right. Thank you very much, both, for that answer, and that was bang on 10 minutes. Before we go to councillors, can I just say, if there are additional points that people want to make, can I suggest for a fuller response or a written response, the forms that the officers have could be a useful way of doing that. I know the council is also preparing written responses to, I think there were 9 questions that were originally sent in by residents, and we're getting comprehensive responses to each of those 9 questions. I appreciate that's not here tonight, but if we went through 9 questions, that's just been 1, we'd be here for a very long time. So we're going to have written answers to those 9 as well. Can we come to councillors next?
That should have then required a planning permission, no? And how about, for example, the fact that the Happy Place Festival does that not require planning permission? Why not?
Why does some require planning permission and others don't require planning permission? I think we answered some of that, but I'm happy to go to that and then...
Okay, I can answer that for you. So, Pub in the Park, they have been on site, total number of non-operative days 13, number of open days 3. Crank Brother was open for 1 day and non-operable days 18. Happy Place 2 open days, non-operable days 6. The build and preparation and removal, so the total days that we are on site that restricts people's access. So you've got to bear in mind, if somebody brings a truck to site to begin to construct something, they do not obstruct people's access. So what we're talking about is, so Pub in the Park, the total number of days on site 9, Crank Brother 13, Happy Place 6, that adds up to 28. We are absolutely available for the council to inspect these days. But we are saying to you...
Can we just...
We're just trying to say that we are within the 28-day limit.
2 seconds. If a question's... Andrew, come on. I know. If a question's asked, surely the whole point is to hear the answer. Come on, guys. Let's hear the answer. I appreciate it. Hang on.
Should we just go to the councils?
We can't. Sorry, hang on. If we've got 3 people shouting, I don't know what we're gonna get out of it. All right. If we've got 3 people shouting with no microphone, we can't hear the question. So it's. I agree, but. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you want to ask a question, we can't hear it on the recording unless you have a microphone. So if you want to ask a question, you have to put your hand up. If 3 of you are shouting at the same time, we cannot hear, okay? And then we can't answer a question. Now, the way that we agreed to run this was that residents would have 12 minutes. You were given 20. We then gave 10 for an answer. We're then going to come to the councillors. I'm happy to make some additional time after that for additional questions, because I can see hands going up, but we need to run it in a way where we can actually hear the question, because otherwise it's just a cathartic experience at shouting at people, which is fine if that's what you guys want to do, but I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. Is that fair? Okay. Right. Can we come to councillors next, please? Councillor Gill, please don't shout at me.
Thank you, Chair. Should I be shouting?
Oh, come on.
Right. I hear the residents, and they make valid points, and it would seem that CIC is not open or apparent to what's going on. I don't know why no disclosure has been made. I suppose they do make money, but I think the residents seem to think that it is not transparent because, of course, nothing has been shown to anyone. But I hear what David Bowler said, that they're responsible for the park. And anything outside the park is not your responsibility. So when drugs are being taken, safety, noise, antisocial behavior, that's not your responsibility once they leave the park. So whose responsibility is it, Kelly?
Sorry, my first name's Laurie and the surname's Kelly, just to clarify.
Oh, sorry, Lauren.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay. So there's a combination of the local council and the police, I would say. Things like drug taking is absolutely a matter for the police. There's things that we can do. We can certainly try and deter it. We can put on more additional presence. But ultimately, it's a criminal offence that the police can deal with. And I know there are a lot of comments about not seeing police, etc.
Yeah, because they seem to be only in the park and not outside.
As I said, I can't speak for the police and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to do
Well,
so. They should have the,
I will
sorry.
take this matter up with the borough
Absolutely.
commander.
Yep, absolutely.
So that is for me to do that.
As I've said,
I will do that. So.
Sorry, just to respond to your point, what we are going to do to try and tackle the antisocial behaviour is we're going to increase additional patrols by APCOA predominantly. You know, they look like police. They're not police. They don't have the same powers, but they look like police. The hope is that will help deter, but they can absolutely deal with on-the-spot offences such as littering in people's gardens, which I've heard people have rightly so commented on. Urination, believe it or not, it counts as littering. We can fine people £500 on the spot. So that's what we are planning to do in response to the issues that were raised.
Right. So the urination point, does the park, CIC, does it have public toilets just at the exit level so that if anybody wants to use those, can they use them?
Yes.
They have?
We have WCs right at the gate on the way in, out. We've also attempted to place WCs on the route from Acton Town's tube station. We have had intermittent success with TfL in the placement of toilet portaloos within the curtilage of TfL's land at the station. We've had intermittent success in placing them on the public highway, but of course nobody wants a bunch of toilets near their premises, so there are practical issues around that. But Councillor, could I, Chair, just address the other point that the Councillor made earlier about the perceived lack of transparency, because I think this is important. Gunnersbury CIC is a wholly owned subsidiary of a registered charity. As such, its accounts are fully audited. Those accounts are at Companies House under the Registrar of Community Interest Companies, and they are at the Charity Commission. In addition, both councils require me to submit our audited accounts to the councils. So there is a degree of disclosure. Like any other charity, we are required to post our financials with the Charity Commission, and we comply with that, and we comply with any requirements from the two councils as well. It's important to address that.
Well, thank you for that clarification. I shall definitely go and look at Companies House and Charity Commission, because I'm an accountant myself, so I know I can view that. Just one more point to Lauren. You just said that the residents should to inform you about clean-up wherever they are, but shouldn't the council be doing the clean-up after such a big event? Without the residents having to identify a street to tell you that that needs cleaning?
The council would do the clean-up, and that's part of the event management plan is the waste collection afterwards. Sorry if my comment was misinterpreted. It was more if there were areas of concern that were picked up during Crank Brothers, I can arrange for those to be proactively patrolled. But the same as any issue, you know, we clean litter and we clean fly tipping, but people are still able to report it, and we'll go and make an additional visit to that. But it wasn't, you know, I'm not asking people to have to do it, but if there are areas of concern, I can make sure those officers are patrolling those locations tomorrow and every event going forward.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that.
Chair,
so if the residents come back to me, then I will come back to you. Okay?
Sorry,
Sure.
and I'm happy to provide, I am obviously working during the day tomorrow as well, so I'm happy to provide my email address and people can ping those across and I'll create a list of locations.
Okay, so the residents come to me.
Chair, if I could just add that the event organisers are also contracted to do a litter pick on their primary ingress and egress routes. What they will do is if they can't remove those bags, they will effectively put it into the waste bins, which Lorian's colleagues will then move. But they are contracted to litter pick on all the major ingress and egress routes.
Thank
you.
Thank
you. I think I'll leave it to my colleagues to ask more questions.
Right. Thanks, Ranjit. Councillor Mashiso, you've decided to give your question to someone else.
Yes, Chair. I would like to defer my question to the resident holding the waste bins. Can you give her a mic? Because I think she was very keen to speak. Could you make your point clear to David and to Lorraine, please? Thank you.
So, right. The reason I'm having to speak out is because unfortunately Bowler has lied to us a lot and is lying to you at this very present moment. Here on my way, coming straight from teaching, I brought 2 boxes of illegal drugs, canisters. These are the noxious canisters that I believe got made illegal a few months ago. 2 boxes, still on our road from the last festival. There's loads of other things on there, but I just didn't, I cycled over, so I only had time to bring, and space to bring these 2. So I live on the first road just outside the main gates. They've not touched us. We didn't have police there. We had, at the last festival, someone attacked one of my really lovely neighbours that I've known my whole life, older gentleman, got cancer. Really, I've never seen him fight with anyone, and he was being attacked by someone. No police in sight. Police have told us before that they only really have to monitor Pope's Lane, the immediate lane around. Bowler's even told his staff that, for example, just to show how he doesn't care about anything outside, the vines that grow over the cycle path that go down the North Circular, over the bike lane, he told his staff that that's nothing to do with them and they don't have to cut them back. Weird, huh? I mean, there's loads of things. Bowler's told us to find somewhere else to live before at the last meeting, which is offensive. I've lost all my customers because I edit music videos for festivals. I can tell that quite often there are DJs that go over the sound limit. Inside my room, 85 decibels, closed windows in this heat, and my chair and my desk vibrate to the point when I'm editing music videos, I edit the beat of the festival into the music videos, so then I have to stay up all night. By the way, noise stops about 1 a.m. and then starts back up at 8 a.m. when they do sound checks, often really loud, and if you're close to it in the park, it damages ears. The children's playground is like right there by the festivals, damage. There's so much stuff, and I wish that he could talk to us and you guys and be honest, because he lies through his teeth and it's so painful. It's caused so much harm. People have, my mum, who's a doctor, got called out to save a child's life in Ealing Hospital. She was stuck because our entire road was filled with taxis. That kid almost died. But that was because it was later, and most of the taxis by then had gone, but if it was like, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours before, that child would have died. So what are your priorities? People's lives or this asshole, I'm sorry?
No.
That will lie to us and
right,
tell us to
okay,
find somewhere else to live.
Let's take that away. Sorry.
Then tell him not to lie to us.
All right, take that away. Can I just say, we've given additional time. No. We've just given residents additional time to speak from the councillors.
Absolutely.
That was a total abuse of it. That means that we can't then give other residents the mic if that's going to be the way that it's conducted. So I think that's a real shame. That's a real shame that that's happened. Yeah, okay. I think it's a real shame that that's happened. We're gonna have to move on, I'm afraid.
With respect, I'm not going to answer that.
That's fine. We'll move on.
I don't think that's an unreasonable position
I
from me.
agree. We're going to move on. Councillor Thompson.
There's a lot of anger here, and I think that's partly because we have spent over 20 years having this conversation. I have been a councillor since 1998, and for most of that time it was the old Turnham Green Ward, which includes your estate. This is not a new problem. I was looking at committee reports from 2005 and the issue of noise and urination, and it goes on. And given that's the case, and we've had various structures, we used to have a joint board, and as the gentleman said, it was rubbish, because it was always it was the lowest priority for both councils. You do your own parks, and then the one we were sharing, that was the bottom of the list. Let's be honest about it. But it's ongoing, and I think that's why there is anger and frustration, and I'm not excusing things that have been said, because if you live there, for at least 20 years, you've had the same story. And you've heard various officers come and go and various, folks, and it's the same old. And there's no sense that it's getting better. In fact, because it's been, intensified, and I get the reasons why, we need the money, the problems are more acute. So I suppose there is a question. In terms of governance, there is a board of trustees. Now, what is their role in sort of keeping an eye on you guys? And is this part of their governance role? Are they actually representing, the people? Is their role to be that voice, or is that not their job?
No, I'll answer. So I'm responsible to a board of trustees. On that board, apart from the chair, every person on that is a resident of Hounslow or Ealing. So all of them are local people. There are, in fact, 2 councillors who are trustees, one from Hounslow and one from Ealing. I am held to account by those trustees for every commercial, every operational, every ethical decision I make, because that's the appropriate governance of a charity. What I would say in terms of your earlier point, Councillor, this is something that's been going on for 20 years. I can only speak to 2018 when I assumed this role. The number of event days this year is indeed greater than last year. There are 15 number of events this year. Last year, there were 10. There is a natural limit to the number of events, which is the license. We cannot breach, nor would we breach the license. The charity's objects are the advancement of education. We had 17,000 school children through our museum, and the provision of leisure and recreation facilities. That's what the charity is set up to do. That's what the trustees hold me to account, that we deliver on that.
Councillor Biddulph.
Thank you. I don't have a life during festivals. I spend my entire time fielding responses and awful statements about what's going on and walking between various roads to make sure that things are running as planned. And as you know, and that's fine, that's not a whinge at all, Crank Brothers has spoiled everything. Absolutely. Councillor Thompson's given a perspective from much longer ago than I have. In 2018, after Lovebox Citadel, I wrote a 28-page report after that year's festivals of all the things that are still happening. That's the difficulty. We made some progress, and now it's all gone back to the beginning again because Crank Brothers was so appalling. We've talked often about all the issues that are common to every festival, which need to be given to each festival organizer as things that they must do, from provision of loos, signage for loos. One tiny sign between Acton Town and the gates this year was not enough to stop the urination and the defecation. Let's just get the facts right, happening wherever, all over the area. I was told when I came to the consultation meeting this year that there was a pack. What I don't know is whether that pack has everything in it, whether it was given to the festival organisers, and whether they bothered to follow it. Whatever it was, ultimately, the CIC is responsible for managing what happens. You may not have responsibility outside the gates, but all of these issues have been raised before, and the organisers have to be responsible for the behaviour outside the gates on all of these issues, whether it's drug taking, defecation, as I've said, loos. And I have every sympathy with residents in Ealing because the road, Pope's Lane, is an Ealing road. I've been dealing with Ealing Council for a couple of years saying it's got to be sorted out. The buses can't get through, the parking's a nightmare, nobody can get in and out of their drives. We have to have some coordination from somebody that brings all of those people together and tackles all of them from a holistic point. I hate that word, but you know what I mean. From it covers both Ealing and Hounslow, and it includes residents' views. My report this year is going to be pretty much like the one in 2018, which started never again. We've heard movements here, very clear statements this evening, not against festivals in total, but against the way in which they're managed and the sort of festivals that they are. Crank Brothers, I'm afraid, has gone right back to the beginning, and we need answers about that. We've got a festival season ahead. We can't go on this summer as we did with the Crank Brothers Festival. Soho House last year was the worst, so I'm dreading that as well. And I really do need answers about what it is that the CIC is going to be doing to improve the communications and the expectations and the outcomes from festival organisers. You've had a change of staff, you've got an organising group that runs things for you. It was too loose. I knew when I met them this year that everything had been lost and it was too loose, and that's got to change.
Chair, before you respond, can I move to suspend standing order so we can get through some of these items?
Seconded, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I need to speak in a considered manner because Crank Brothers, a company, they're not here to give their own account. But what I will say, Councillor, is we set forth to Crank Brothers a series of advisory notes and guidance based on previous experience. The pushback from Crank Brothers was, thank you very much, but we think we can do better. They presented that event management plan to the SAG. They were convincing in that arena. Am I content with their performance? Absolutely not. Do I feel that they have potentially, and the evidence of that is the fact that I'm sitting here now, set us back in terms of relations with local residents? Yes, they have. Would we invite them back to Gunnersbury under any circumstances? That I cannot answer at this point because we have to give them the opportunity to make their case. They have submitted 2 attempts at that in the fortnight since they were here. Neither were satisfactory. I will be taking this up with the Board of Trustees, Councillor Thompson, because if we decide not to re-engage with them, there will be a commercial issue at hand because it will be a loss of revenue. But revenue is not everything. The reputation of the organisation I run and the benefit to local residents transcends that. This is not just about money. They were deeply disappointed in Joe, and they will have to work very hard to come back.
Just to add to your comment, Councillor Biddulph, so obviously the Safety Advisory Group is sort of the professional advisory body where all these events are heard. It's attended by TfL, the police, various bodies apart from the council, etc. Ealing Council representatives have been invited to attend that on numerous occasions, and they haven't. I'm not here to criticise Ealing, they're not here to defend themselves, but we have attempted to engage with our counterparts in Ealing Council. They're welcome to attend the Safety Advisory Group. They haven't. I think it's something that we need to pick up as well, because we field a lot of the concerns from Ealing residents. We get a lot of the complaints about noise, we get a lot of the complaints, we deal with things like pop-up traders on Ealing, on that side of the road, trading standards, we will deal with it, but ultimately it's not our residents and we shouldn't be providing that service necessarily to Ealing residents. So I would let's pick that up separately. I think if there's anything you can do on your side, particularly as at the Ealing Common councillors, I don't know if Councillor Dabrowska is still, oh, okay. But I think it's a valid point. We haven't invited them, but I think we perhaps need to put more pressure so they're part of the conversation, both in terms of the event management, but also the debrief as well, because there's things that they all need to know.
Councillor Biddulph, I think you've got one more, and then I'll go to Councillor Todd.
Just a couple of points. In terms of Ealing, they've done nothing this year, having promised to do pavements, blocking signs, blocking the way, all sorts of things, as well as the traffic. They're not taking it seriously. But the main point is for you, David, which is you can say no to Crank Brothers today. We understand about the financial implications, but there is a limit, and you've talked about that limit. I don't know why you're giving them any more space, any more time, any more thought. The answer to Crank Brothers should be no, never again, just like 2018. They've set us back, it's ruined the weekends, it's ruined, look at the passion in the room tonight. I just urge you to say know right now. And what I'd like to know, thinking ahead to the future, is what is it that you're doing in terms of a legacy for the park? I know you've got to manage buildings and make sure they're in good repair, and you've had some lottery funding to do that, but what is it that you're leaving? Because at the moment you're leaving a park that people can't use. I've got a photo of the fencing going off in a leaflet that's going out now, which residents really resent. You're leaving parkland that is not being allowed to recover and is not being well treated. Ultimately, it's a park. It's not a festival playground. What is it that you're trying to do other than bring in money for residents? It's local residents that we're concerned about. I accept that you say more of them come to festivals than we think they do, but more of them are also being excluded, and more of them each year are complaining, and from different areas.
Chair, I'll answer the substantive piece. Why don't I say no to Crank Brothers here? Because they're not here. I need to speak to them within a commercial environment and to have that conversation with them. I have to do that. In terms of the legacy, we have a 25-year management agreement. We're 7 years into it. We effectively lost 18 months of that due to COVID. In terms of the legacy, there is an estimated £30 million worth of heritage deficit repairs. We have to try and raise at least £30 million. So one of the challenges we have, and this is, I'm afraid, boring governance, is that it was mentioned earlier about the stables. The stables were not included in our lease. The stables remain with the councils. We've already had one EOI, expression of interest, from the lottery rejected. We need those stables transferred to us so that we can make the lottery application. You cannot make a lottery application unless you have at least 22 years leasehold interest in a piece of land. So one of the big challenges we've got is we have to prepare for 2028 if the council cuts all the funding. Therefore, I have to build some reserve. I have to have some rainy day money. The programme of maintenance from the lottery is now 7 years out. It will cost at least £250,000 to do the external decorations of the museum. We're having to plan for the legacy of lottery before we even start trying to raise the 30 million for the Potomac, the small mansion, and the stables. That's what we're working on. With respect, dealing with this noise, and it is legitimate, I am not in any way, but this, in some senses, is a distraction from that long-term aim. But it may well be the case that what we have to learn from this is that we are simply not communicating well enough to enough of you. That we are making great efforts within the charity to do the right thing. That message clearly isn't being heard by so many of you. So the thing I would take from this, Joe, is, and you have told me this several times, we need to improve our communication so that the lady over there stops calling me a liar and we can get a degree of trust and respect between us all.
Councillor Todd, I think you had a very quick one.
David, we meet again. You've got a difficult job, but I haven't got a clue what your finances are. I go there frequently and see even more ground being taken over for events. So if I look at your balance sheet now, how much profit did you make last year?
We're not audited, John, until August, so I can't give you the audited amount, but that audit will appear. But generally speaking, we have moved now to try and achieve a balanced budget. What I can tell you is the group, because it is the CIC and its host charity, has around 870,000 in free reserves. So we do have some reserves. We are looking, the trustees have told me they want 6 months reserves. Now this year our operating budget will be in around about 2.7 million. So we're nowhere near 6 months reserves. You want to know what we spend the money on? I'll give you an example. Ealing Council, both councils give us 250,000. We pay Ealing's in-house grounds maintenance contractor £300,000 to cut the grass and empty the poo bins and maintain the trees. So we actually pay back to one of the council partners more for the very basic provision of grass cutting than we actually get in terms of payment from them. The business model of the CIC has never stacked up, John. So in the first year, we had a £250,000 loan from Ealing in order to pay the wages. The model requires additional income every year. So it is not a balanced budget with the council's input. We can only achieve balance by commercial activity.
Chair, can I ask two more quick questions? How many outstanding complaints are you dealing with in respect to the event that...
91.
91, yeah. Is there nothing in the contract that has some sort of penal effect? I mean, we've got the head of enforcement here, 91 people, we've got a crowd who are incandescent about behaviour, which you clearly concede.
I absolutely concede that, yeah.
I mean, was the contract devoid of that?
The contract does not have penalties relating to the specificity of complaints about events. It has provision within it for the council to take us to task on something like 24 different outcomes, but that's not one of them. Multitude of other ones, but not that one.
Well, do you hold a deposit pending these complaints resolution or not?
Do we, sorry?
Deposit against?
Yeah, so what we do with the events is they have to put a bond, a deposit for ground damage, and we keep that if they damage the ground. So, but it's not related to complaint, it's related to ground damage.
My final point, very helpful, yeah. People mentioned FOI and a lack of transparency, and you mentioned conditional transparency. The overall finance, I'm aware of the structure really, yeah. Is there any aspect of that finance that's not available to public domain?
No, the audited accounts, so the issue about FOIs, as a charity, we're not governed by FOI. However, the management agreement requires us to support the councils in its obligations under FOI. So we support the council as much as we can in providing answers to questions that are posed by the public to the council. And again, the audited accounts are with the councils.
Can I finally ask a question to Lorraine? We met before a year ago, yeah. I'm slightly concerned that we can use provocative language tonight, the council is somewhat toothless here. Didn't no one else turn up when all this was going on and read this lot, the Riot Act, or you know, what are we going to do in the future? It just seems, I mentioned David was here, a year or 2 years ago, and we had some very constructive dialogue, certainly on sound and things like that. And I hear about this pre and post safety group that meet with the police and others, but I'm dealing with something on Duke's Meadows now. There's no teeth there. It's all manana. We can do it in tomorrow. And I feel for you. Are you toothless? Do you have the powers or what?
Depends what powers you're talking about, Councillor. I think I mean, my role here is regulatory, so it's about any regulatory functions, which include things like licensing and noise and waste, etc. Anything planning's not within my remit, but you know, I can speak to that. Anything to do with, I suppose, the council's contractual agreements with Gunnersbury CIC, that's not within my remit. I don't know what the enforcement provisions would be within that contract. It's not my area of expertise. We know we do have teeth where we need to have teeth. As such, you know, we haven't seen any breach of licensing conditions, and I know that's going to get a response, but we haven't seen any breach of license conditions. If we did, licensing enforcement would take the relevant action. If there were breaches of planning and conditions, planning enforcement would take the relevant action.
One complaint, you haven't seen any of the evidence relating to that.
We get a lot, I mean, it is a lot of complaints, and we'll investigate every single complaint, and we'll come out to every single complaint as we do during the events. We did during Crank Brother. You know, we monitor the noise, for example, proactively and reactively. During Crank Brother, there were 7 monitoring locations across the borough because noise, won't bore people.
Okay.
I know it's late.
That's all preventative,
but also reactive. We get live complaints from residents to say,
when
this is
was
really, really loud. We come to their property, we take it from inside the property, from outside the property, and see if it is in breach of the noise.
1 minute. Yeah. Well, when did you last prosecute someone?
For what?
Well, related to park offences.
I haven't. In terms of licensing, we absolutely enforce notices all the time. We closed down an off-licence earlier today because they didn't have the licence to sell alcohol.
I'm thinking more of these public events.
We haven't had any reason to, Councillor.
Right, okay.
Councillor Biddulph, I think you've got a 10-second one.
Yes, just very quickly. Could you say where people should send their complaints to? Because there isn't clarity over that, and there's a lot, you use the word trust, a lot of mistrust about the reports being accurate, who has complained, the numbers, those sorts of things, what they've complained about. There is very little trust, understandably.
So I understand the CIC obviously have their hotline. David may wish to add comments about that. From a council perspective, I would urge people to report things online. I'll report it tool. Tomorrow, for example, I'll have myself and 2 other officers will be monitoring the event surrounding it. We'll also have a team of officers who are picking up those reports as they are made live and calling them through to us so we can respond to them. So I would say, sorry, report it. Pardon? Online.
Council website.
Council website, www.hounslow.gov.uk/report. But if you go on even to the Hounslows main page, it's one of the main tabs, report something. You can report a noise nuisance. Yeah, so that will be picked up.
Right, Councillor Machise.
Well, given the seriousness and emotions of this particular item, Chair, I think I'd like to propose a motion to, firstly, for you as Chair to write to the Council and the Cabinet members, including the CIC trustees, so to have a further meeting, because I think there are issues here which have not been addressed, so we can meet with residents again and review these issues in another forum.
Seconded by Councillor Biddulph. Can we have a vote then from councillors in favour? Against? And abstentions? Carried. All right. I will do that. Thank you, Councillor Machise. So we've adopted that motion. I will write to the Council, to Cabinet members and to the CIC trustees, and we'll have a further meeting with residents. Okay? Yeah. Right. Thank you very much for that. And Laurie and David, thank you very much for your time here. I know it was a long one. We're moving on. Right. Slightly later than billed, we are going to move to the open forum. So we spent an hour on that agenda item. This is a chance to ask any other questions that haven't been raised yet. I haven't received any questions in advance of the meeting. Please be mindful, if you do not get to ask a question, please do write it down on an evaluation sheet. So I'm going to come to you. You waited so patiently. You came to me at the very beginning of the meeting and asked if you could ask a question. So I'm going to come to you first. Omar, can we give a microphone over here, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's better. Thank you. This could be an urgent question, if I may. It's about Kew Railway Bridge. This is a Grade 2 listed structure, protected by English heritage. It's an iconic infrastructure in this very location. It is cracking apart. A major crack is running down the facade wall underneath where the sailing club is, and it's expanding. The wall itself is bulging out.
I went to the British Library and I discovered the original engineering drawings made by William Robert Galbraith, a Scottish engineer, in 1863. He was the first chief engineer of the London and South West Railway Company Limited. He built the whole railway line from here to Cornwall. He built the Bakerloo line, and he built the drain, the line from Waterloo to Bank. This was his very first project. I made available this drawing to Network Rail. They then installed scaffolding to look at the problem. They then brought in Murphy as a contractor who did more detailed work. And they have since put up more scaffolding, and they have drilled through a 4-inch core, which Murphy engineers tell me is to ram through a rod to install steel plates on the facade of the building, the facade, to hold it where it is and prevent it bulging further out. All this work is being done without the consent or the knowledge of English Heritage, as Councillor Peter Thompson has discovered today with an email response from English Heritage. They know nothing about this. It is quite clear Network Rail, which has now covered the site with huge plywood fencing, cynically, I think, because they do not want to see what they're going to be doing, they are in direct contravention of the requirement that as a conservation area and as a listed heritage, the London Borough of Hounslow has a clear and obvious duty to be requiring Network Rail to explain exactly what they're doing. They're doing it without consultation to any neighbourhood, committees, or the council. And indeed, Murphy as a contractor, which is compliant with its contractor considerate care responsibility, has smoothed its PR people into talking to the Sailing Club and to the Strand on the Green Association and assuring them that all is going to be well and nothing needs to be done until the work is done. This is very clearly a hugely damaging action that is likely to be putting irreparable damage onto a most iconic and very valuable part of the Strand on the Green's infrastructure, noticed and valued by tourists all the time. I would urge immediate action, please.
Thank you very much for raising that. Councillor Thompson, I think you have a response.
So I met Andrew in the street on Thursday, I think, wasn't it? And he relayed the situation. So I got in touch with Network Rail, Hounslow Council and Historic England, and I only heard back but very, very promptly from Historic England, still waiting for the council and Network Rail. And as Andrew said, this is a Grade 2 listed building. So although Network Rail do have permitted development rights in emergency, obviously we don't want the bridge to fall down, this doesn't seem to be covered by that. So as Andrew said, there's been no consultation. As far as they're concerned, there's been no planning applications, no consent has been given. And even though they have that permitted right in emergency, they still have the legal requirement on listed buildings to get consent. So I think we're at the stage now when they're on board. They've offered their expertise and to work with the council and provide their specialist engineers. It's not quite the normal everyday work of a council enforcement team. I think I need to sort of, given Andrew's raised it, undertake to keep chasing and to raise it higher and to keep colleagues and obviously Andrew and the local community involved. We want it fixed, obviously. We don't want there to be any risk. We don't want a repeat of Hammersmith Bridge and no more access on the district line and all the rest of it. But it has to be done properly. That's why it's listed. So, Andrew, thank you for telling me about that. And so I'm just maybe put on record my thanks to Historic England, who have been, in my experience, the most proactive Quango I've ever come across. You know, second day and very detailed response. Whereas Network Rail, you try and find out who you're meant to get in touch with on their website or anywhere else. It's like, I don't know, unbelievable. But thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Giles.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. As you well know, this is a topic that we have discussed at length. I kind of wish I'd known about this a little bit more because I had a meeting on Tuesday with the Quay to Chelsea strategy where this did come up because there are concerns on the Barnes side of the bridge as well as us. And I think we're all equally frustrated at National Rail's lack of joined-up thinking, as we well know from the experience with the footpath by Strand of the Green School. And they've been very quiet on this topic. Unfortunately, Sabile's already left, but I spoke to him about it on Friday as well, because this is something that we have great concern about. And as Tim Hurley knows, the project that we're working on with the towpath is also impacted, especially under the junction of the bridge and the wall there. So thank you very much. I think we'll get Historic England, and Peter and I can continue to work on this to ensure that we get some good traction, no pun intended, because we know that a lot of it has to do with the weight and the fact there has been continuous erosion of supports to the bridge, and it does impact travel to and from Richmond across all lines, and there will be more forthcoming.
Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, go on.
Thank you. Sorry, I would like to apologize first of all for the disturbance and the high emotions tonight. I'm sure you can appreciate it's been years and years and we have the same discussion. Now, it's unfortunate that Mr. Bowler left because I'm actually going to say something a bit controversial and say that and something nice about him, because he is in fact working within the license and the lease that the council has provided. In fact, if you look at the lease, there is a clause 22 that states clearly that the CIC cannot answer FOI and they must always send it to the council. In addition, and this is why I was very keen to talk to Ms. Kelly, the license is incredibly blanket and vast. Now, you did say that Westminster Council is 75 decibel, but I do in fact have here on my phone the license for BST, and if I may read something to you, all major events with capacity between 5,000 and 19,999,000 defined in condition 12A, the music noise level shall not at 1 meter from the facade of any noise-sensitive premises exceed 65 decibel over a 5-minute period. Now, there are 2 schools directly next to the park. Next to the event side, there is a playground. There is multiple sports facilities which are now taken over by the festivals. These are all sensitive areas. The license does not regulate for them. The license is vast. The license is blanket. It sits within your department to make a change. And we ask you politely, please, can you consider this?
So to come back to a couple of points, so I think as David Bowler mentioned, they employ acoustic consultants. The same acoustic consultants work on a number of Hyde Park events, and they've advised that a number of their events have a limit of 75 dB, which is where my information came from. But we can have that conversation separately. With regards to, I think, your query and your request to formally review the licence, I'm not at this meeting going to commit to that either way. My priority for the rest of this summer, it's a very busy period for us. There are other events happening, not just at Gunnersbury Park, across the borough. It's our busiest time by far for things like traveller incursions, for noise, etc. My priority until the middle of September is to manage the events, to put our resources into making sure these events are continually monitored. We engage with the event holders beforehand. So I'm not committing to conducting a review of the licence. It's incredibly laborious, it's incredibly resource intensive, and right now, I don't have the resources to put into that. I'm not saying we're not doing it ever, but I'm being honest to say that right now, my officers are working on monitoring the events that are taking place across the borough, not just at Gunnersbury Park. We've got 2 weekends at Boston Manor Park, where we've got Junction 2. We've got the Goa Music Festival that's happening this weekend. I don't have the resources that would be needed from licensing experts and noise experts to review a licence right now, and I don't think it's the best use of resources. My priority is making sure these events happen and they're regulated. Anybody can review a licence. It's not just up to me. There are provisions for anybody, be it David Bowler, and I know he's got views on that, and I'm not going to speak for him on whether he, wants to make amendments or whatever, but anyone can request for a licence to be reviewed. What I can commit to is that after the event season has finished this year, that we will look at it again.
Councillor Mashiso, quickly.
Sorry, Lauren, just a point of clarification. I've got this leaflet here, and I know AI is quite a big thing nowadays, but I see a monitoring unit that reads 93 dB, and it looks like it's in the park. What do you mean when you say it's supposed to be 75 or less? Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be higher within the park. That's the nature of it. So 65, 75 dB is actually as equivalent of sort of, cars going, heavy traffic, etc. So in the park itself, in the event, if you're standing next to a speaker, it will be far in excess of that. That's the nature of all events, all festivals. So it's to do with sort of monitoring locations around the park. So it will be that these set monitoring locations around the park. I'm happy to provide those details afterwards, yeah. But it's those limits, again, being very open and transparent, they will be higher in the park than 75 dB. And I think that's where some of the concerns is, because people said, we've been inside there. If you stood next to the speaker, if you're next to a speaker at a festival or event or whatever, it's probably going to be about 150. It's incredibly loud. So I think we need to perhaps do a bit of education about what those limits are and where they might be. You're within your rights to laugh at me, that's absolutely fine. But again, I'm being transparent. Inside the park, if you're right next...
No.
We'll pick it up, thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
if we're going to shout, we're going to move on from Gunnersbury now, because we need to have other conversations. So, lady in the grey.
Chair.
Yeah. I'm not really sure if this is the exact place, but is there a reason why Hounslow Council are dragging their heels over the parking restrictions down Strand? When they introduced when Brentford moved from Griffin Park, the council put in restrictions Saturdays and Sundays 2 till 4 and Monday to Friday 6 till 8. When Brentford played at Griffin Park, these restrictions were event days only. Yet when they moved to their current location, the council, in what could only be seen from residents' points of view as a money grab, have inflicted these all day, every day, 52 weeks a year, regardless of whether there's any matches going on. Now, I've been made aware, I know there was a petition by residents to revert to the old structure. I am aware there is a consultation, albeit it wasn't given out to all residents, and I did have to search the website for it. I also note that the council aren't going to make a decision until February 26. Why is this? Why are we even having a I understand they do a consultation, but why? Why can they not just revert to how it was previously? Local businesses are struggling. Residents, I'm not affected, I don't live on Strand, but residences can't have visitors. Pubs complaining that people don't go there. Strand Cafe, his business is affected. Why on earth are we having this nonsense when we should just have what was there previously when it was at Griffin Park?
All right, I think Councillor Giles.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So for some history, this is something that as councillors we have asked the council to look at since 2018. There was a consultation done then, and the response was, I think, less than 20%. So they didn't take it as as actioned, then all three of us in Riverside have been involved in this process. You know, the first step is a petition, then there's the consultation. We've been discussing the various options, and the consultation closes on Friday. So once that happens, we will ask the council to analyse and accelerate the timeline, because we do understand that February 26 is a long way down the line, especially, as you say, because so many businesses and residents have been impacted by the blanket changes since they were implemented in, well, prior to when I got elected in 2018. So we have been pushing. I think all three of us have been pushing to get this done. So we've been trying to work for you. It just seems that there's the bureaucracy behind this, because the petition was presented in October of last year. So the fact that it took from October to May just to get those options reviewed is an indication of the bureaucracy that we're having to encounter. So I know that's not an answer you wanted, but that is the answer I can provide.
Can I just say, if you live in the area, you really, because I do, you should have received a letter from the council that was addressed to you. Okay, so that's the reason why. So, but the rest of us did receive it. Yeah.
Right, we have literally got time for one more. Sam, I think you had your hand up. Who had their hand up? Is if it's about Gunnersbury, we need to move on from the topic. Then we need to move on. Sorry, Andrew. If it's quick and it's not.
Good evening. I've just had a query about, okay, there's Gunnersbury's festivals, you talk about other festivals. You're, as part of your role is involved in the enforcement team, is there ever a point, or do you have the powers to sort of effectively pull the plug if there's something going wrong at a festival? Crank Brothers apparently had 2 people stabbed at it, amongst other things, as well as noise and everything else. Do you have the power to sort of effectively pull the plug?
It's a very good question. We would, within the licence, I would imagine. I've worked for local authority for 18 years. It's never something I've done. The police would also have the power to immediately pull the plug. Potentially, yes. I'm being very open and honest. It's not something, as I said, I've ever encountered before. The police would also absolutely have the power to shut down anything. You know, there's all sorts of things. If we had, I don't know, a food poisoning outbreak, we'd have the option to completely shut things down and things like that. If there was a fire, we'd, you know, if we were not, you know, satisfied with health and safety regulations, in theory, we could absolutely shut an event down. But as I said, in 18 years of local government, it's not something that I've ever been made aware of.
Right. Lorien, thank you very much. We are going to have to move on to agenda item number 7, which is the issue tracker. We're not going to spend a huge amount of time on this because we do have until past. So I'm going to suggest that we note the issue tracker. And I know that if there are any additional things that we want to add to it, if you could just send them to me or Chaz, that would be appreciated. Happy with that? Okay, agenda item 8, the minutes, which are usually at the first item on the agenda, but they're number 8 for some reason. Can I suggest we note them unless there are any changes? Or agreed, approved, whatever, perfect. Urgent business, I haven't been notified of any. Thank you very much, everyone, for sticking with us until 10:30. I appreciate it's been a fractious, sometimes meeting. I hope it was useful. Obviously, we've committed to writing to the council and getting some further answers for everyone who had questions outstanding. Therefore, the next meeting is on the 13th of October, and the meeting is now closed. Thank you very much.